Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners work session on, you can't hear me? Okay. Excuse me. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, June 23rd. I'm Kelly McNicholas Curry, and also in the room with me is Commissioner Patty Clapper, County Manager John Peacock, David Pesnichek with the EOTC, and our grassroots team and IT support staff. And then I will turn it over to, we have commissioners joining us from home, George Newman and Steve Child, who is our chair and who will chair today's meeting.
So welcome, everybody. And Greg, you joined us just in the nick of time. So we have the full board here. First on our agenda for this afternoon is a discussion, a presentation by the community development staff, and we have several of them online. I'll hand it over to Cindy. So this will have to do with the development outside the urban growth boundary, and this was brought on specifically by the proposal to do some food food vending things at the Brush Creek Park and Ride, which is outside the urban growth boundary. So Cindy, I'll hand it over to you. Welcome. You're muted.
Hi, thanks. Nice to see everybody. And I'm going to immediately turn it over to Ellen Sassano, who's going to do the presentation today. But yes, by way of that background, I'd like to just say that we thought we would bring a broader perspective on development outside of the urban growth boundary, or just for some history today. And we're not focusing on any specific applications or anything like that today. It's a broader work session on our policies in the code relative to development of all types outside of the urban growth boundary. So, Ellen?
Yeah, great, thank you. So for those who might be watching, I'm Ellen Sassano, and I'm the long-range planner for Pickens County. And commissioners, as you know, the Community Development Department will be looking at growth management and underlying zoning principles over the next several months to determine, and I'm going to ask Zach to start some slides here to follow, basically to determine whether our current growth management and zoning tools still meet our community objectives. So next slide, thanks. Yeah. Are they still effective? And as part of that discussion, we are going to embark on a public outreach effort that you are aware of. It's actually going to start, our first public outreach meeting will be in 2 days. And I'll give a little bit more information about that in a minute. As you may recall, the Board of County Commissioners recently developed a long-term vision statement that is going to help guide that effort. So next slide, please. Zach, thanks. So this is just a quick clip from the Pickens County webpage, Community Development Department webpage. And I'm going to give more detailed information about this at the end of the presentation. But basically, as I said, June 25th, 10 till noon, we will have our first public outreach meeting regarding growth management planning. We've had great public interest expressed and hope to have a really good, diverse group helping us with that discussion. And I'm going to give more information about how to be involved at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So as I said, the board took the time to develop a vision statement around growth management, really looking forward for the next 40 years or so, what this community should be striving towards. And I don't know that you've seen it since you developed it. Here it is on the screen. Utilize growth management and the land use code to create an equitable, sustainable, and resilient regional quality of life and economy for the future, and to meet our climate action objectives. Excuse the frog in my throat. So today, we are not looking for any formal action from you, and we are looking for some direction. Basically, whether or not our foundational policies around containing urban level commercial and residential development within the urban growth boundary areas that are established in this valley are still on the mark, or whether we should be looking at some changes. Next slide, please. So Zach Hendricks put together this, in my opinion, really great graphic to give us the lay of the land. When we're talking about urban growth boundary areas, this helps to describe what exists today. At the bottom portion of your screen, thanks, Zach, is the city of Aspen, and the darker area, sort of darker pink, is the municipal boundary, and then the lighter crosshatched area is the urban growth boundary area. It's been established by the city through their Aspen Area Community Plan. Then as you move up, well, I guess we should show the Highway 82 corridor first so we know where we are. There's Highway 82 leading down the valley to Basalt. In the middle of the screen to the left, that is actually the municipal boundary for the town of Snowmass Village. And Brush Creek Road is coming down the middle there towards 82. And so the big area just above the highway there is Wildcat, which was annexed in the last 15 years by the town. And you've got Brush Creek Village just below that, coming down to Brush Creek Road. And then the Brush Creek Intercept lot, yep, is right there. Then if you continue down the valley, all the way down, I don't know how well you can see it, but you come to the urban growth boundary for the town of Basalt. So there's the municipal boundary and then the urban growth boundary area, which is really typically considered to be the area that at some point could be annexed to the municipal area that it is adjacent to and used for urban levels of development. At the moment, these areas are still in unincorporated Pitkin County, but could eventually be developed. So those are the areas we refer to when we're talking about the urban growth boundary areas. And
can you zoom in a bit on Basalt? Excuse me.
Yeah, it's really it's down there. Zach, is it possible to zoom in?
This is in the presentation. We can't zoom in, but later in the slide there's another angle that will show Basalt a little bit more clearly.
Better. It's really all the way at the top of your screen there. So yeah, it's difficult to see. It's not nearly as big as either the Aspen or Snowmass areas. I should have shown you before we move off this slide, going back to the Aspen urban growth boundary, the down valley edge of that UGB, as we like to say, using an acronym, is the end of the Pitkin County Airport runway. That recently got moved, actually at the request of Pitkin County. So that is the extent of the UGB on that end of the valley for the city of Aspen.
Kelly?
Thank you.
So yeah, thanks.
So Ellen, I just have a
Clearly,
quick question. With regards to Snowmass, have they defined an urban growth boundary, or is it assumed to be the municipal boundary?
You know, they have always defined what they call an area of influence, but I think once they annexed Wildcat and came all the way down to the highway, I'm assuming that area of influence now does basically coincide with their municipal boundary. I haven't looked at their most recent plan to confirm that, but you know, they have a concern when they talk about area of influence about the whole Brush Creek corridor down to the highway. So the area of influence may extend beyond the municipal boundary. I can confirm that, but so no, they never did actually identify what we refer to as a growth boundary area, but have gone with other the area of influence as potential for. I think it's more area of influence than an area that they're considering for annexation, frankly, beyond what they already have within their boundaries. Does that make sense?
Mostly.
Does that answer your? Yeah. Okay. I'd have to go back. They don't have an urban growth boundary defined per se.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you.
Sure. So, thanks, Zach. So clearly, transportation is a critical element of land use. And over the years, there's been conversation about commercial and residential development associated with transit stations like the Brush Creek Park and Ride along the Highway 82 corridor between Aspen and Basalt. And so there's this term transportation-oriented development, which is planner speak. TOD, it's also referred to as. Basically, it's referring to a type of urban development that maximizes the amount of residential business uses within walking distance, and that's sometimes within a quarter mile of public transport. Promote in theory a symbiotic relationship between dense, compact urban form and public transport use. So that's a Wikipedia definition for what it's worth, but not everybody in the world is familiar with that term, TOD. Next slide, please. So over the years, there have been several iterations, TOD concepts discussed, and one of them that some of you may be familiar with was called pearls on a string. This is going back again maybe 15 years, and really this notion was just to identify specific areas along the highway corridor as transit center nodes, and two of those nodes were the Airport Business Center and the Brush Creek Intercept lot. So jumping to another I think really helpful graphic that Zach put together for us. These yellow dots between the city of Aspen, Snowmass, and up at the top, Basalt, are all representing just transit stops. These are not intercept lots. They're just all of the transit stops for RAFTA. And so, again, you can see that transit really connects, functions to connect the valley and all of the uses between these jurisdictions. So next slide, please. So given the critical role of transit and transportation as a component of land use, the EOTC, which is the Elected Officials Transportation Committee, of which the Board of County Commissioners are a member, actually hired a regional transportation manager within the last 5 years, David Pestok, who is with us today. I believe he's in the room with you. And the EOTC developed transit-specific objectives. And before we jump into the more land use specific policies, David is going to walk us through really the role of the EOTC. And so I will turn it over to him at this point.
Thanks, Ellen. You guys able to hear me okay? Okay. So my name is David Pestok. I'm the Regional Transportation Administrator, as Ellen described, for the EOTC, or the Elected Officials Transportation Committee. The EOTC, the primary purpose, as you're aware, is to support mass transportation within the Roaring Fork Valley, so between Glenwood Springs and Aspen, but really taking more of that regional context outside of the jurisdictions, specifically Aspen or Snowmass or downtown Glenwood Springs in particular, but really that interconnection between all of those different jurisdictions. So as the EOTC, the board, as Ellen mentioned, being a member of the EOTC, is able to provide direction and funding opportunities that are really with that hat on, looking through the lens of mass transportation, supporting mass transportation within the Roaring Fork Valley. You as the Board of County Commissioners, because we're really looking at more of a regional perspective, are in a unique seat, often different, say, from the City of Aspen Council or Snowmass Council, in that you have this next opportunity to review possibly direction provided by the EOTC through a separate lens, and that's the land use lens. So as was mentioned earlier, some of the background with this conversation has been around direction provided to staff at the last EOTC meeting for a food truck out at Brush Creek Park and Ride. So this is, from my perspective, this is part of that vetting process. This is part of that land use vetting process. and getting that in front of you. So I would encourage you, as Cindy said early on, that this is a conversation to be looking at that broader scale. If you are thinking about that food truck and any other initiatives by the EOTC, this is the time to really be looking at it through that land use lens and through that perspective. So I guess on the food truck itself, this is, like I said, this is, as I see, one of the land use vetting points, and this would be a common vetting point for any direction from the EOTC that would require land use review. In this case, it would go forward to a location and extent, so depending on direction from the board, it could come back to the Board of County Commissioners, or it would at least go to the Planning and Zoning Commission for Pickens County to review it against the comprehensive plan. So that's kind of some background in terms of how I see the two fitting in. I don't see the two as necessarily being mutually exclusive. I don't see that one direction provided at one level is defines direction that needs to be made at a different level. So I guess that's where I would encourage you to think about these issues in front of you in light of the zoning that's in place, the master plans that are in place, as well as direction and interpretation that you're receiving from your community development staff in terms of how the food truck and any other development that might be focused on mass transportation fits into those plans as well. So I am here, I'm in person at the board meeting, so I'm open to any questions or anything else, but I just want to provide a little bit of background in the way I view that interaction between the Board of County Commissioners sitting in your capacity now versus sitting with the EOTC.
I have a question. Steve, I have a question.
Go ahead, Patty.
Yeah, so if we were to be looking at some commercial uses at the intercept lot of Brush Creek Park and Ride, are there plans that we would have to modify, like which is ongoing right now, the Brush Creek Master Plan, which is in the current phase of currently being updated, but would we not have to change a few things rather than just do an extent and location? Aren't there other guidelines that say no commercial use at the intercept or Park and Ride?
Jump in, Cindy, if you'd like. But the location and extent review will be weighing the proposal against the current Brush Creek Master Plan. And so depending on when that review takes place, that will be that will be considered. So as you said, that plan is in the process of being updated, but until it's done, we're going to be working off the existing plan. Cindy, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's correct. But we will be looking at a new plan.
Yeah, I understand that, but in this, on commercial uses, preclude commercial uses that would change the rural residential character of the area, modifying zoning if necessary to prohibit commercial uses other than home occupations. Is that just to the Brush Creek area, or does that also include the Park and Ride?
As I recall, the Park and Ride is within the Brush Creek Master Plan area. The boundary of the is included in the master plan. So that direction would apply to the intercept lot.
Okay. I just need to clarify that.
You know, that clearly is a conversation that will be had down the road, and while it's certainly relevant to today's discussion, we're not focusing on it today.
Right.
But it's a great question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions, Dave? Before I
Yeah, I have one. Thanks. Just to piggyback off of Patty's question. Where does CDOT play into this? CDOT owns the Brush Creek lot. I believe it was originally the intent and the funding is for Park and Ride. So beyond just our ability or lack of ability in terms of location and extent, what role does CDOT play in this with their ownership?
I can speak to that for the park and ride specifically. So using the food truck, say, as an example, so anytime we're doing something that is sitting outside the lease, specifically identified in the lease, we need to get CDOT approval as the property owner. So I am working with CDOT now to obtain a letter authorizing us to have a 1-year experimental food truck out at the park and ride. We haven't received that yet. So if it's not specifically identified in the lease, we need to obtain authorization from them, essentially, before we can go through the land use process.
And then, Dave, what happens if down the road other uses want to utilize that lot? I mean, at what point does the CDOT's role in funding? Again, I thought the funding for that was for a park and ride and not for any other commercial uses. I mean, down the road you could see requests for, as Ellen said, TOD, housing down there. That's been discussed in the past, and a wide variety of other commercial proposals.
I think it would depend on whether the development proposal is physically on the park and ride property or an adjacent property. If it's physically on the CDOT property, then they need to say that it's okay. That property was condemned, from what I understand, for specific purposes as a park and ride. So with, say, the food truck as an example, that we have to demonstrate that food truck is accessory to the park and ride, and the park and ride isn't accessory to the food truck. So it's an important point, and that's something that CDOT will weigh anytime something happens on that property, or we're negotiating a lease, or there's any use at that location. But the review is different if it's an adjacent property and it's not specifically a CDOT property.
Right, and then as CDOT perhaps reviews proposals, any future proposals, the BOCC would have the opportunity to weigh in and provide comments?
Yes.
Thanks.
Great. And any other questions for Dave before I take it back? No?
If I might, real quick, Alan, if you don't mind me just jumping in. Today, I know we have a lot of material to get through that kind of sets the stage for the background and the history. And we're kind of hoping that to get into more of the specifics at another time with the board. So there's a lot of questions about a lot of the sites along the corridor that we might want to get into at further work sessions coordinated with Dave and his work. But I think today we're just trying to set the big picture stage more for where we've come from in our land use policies and where we are today, so that the board can provide us with direction or new direction, or talk about some ideas moving forward. So with that, I think I'll just turn it back to Ellen.
Great. Yeah, thanks. So as George said, we have had, over the years, community development department has fielded a lot of different inquiries for commercial and residential development, not only at the Brush Creek Intercept lot or in that specific area, but also just outside of the urban growth boundary along the Highway 82 corridor, really up and down that corridor to as far down as BOCC. And so looking at commercial and affordable housing requests, we go back to our land use code and specific policies that have been in place regarding development outside of urban growth boundary areas. These have been in place for a long time, probably going on 30 years. And so we want to look at some of those policies, just check in and make you aware of them. Next slide, please. Right. So as I think I've just covered this one. So next slide. So land use code policies, there are several of which are in your memorandum, but I'm just going to really summarize them in two statements here. One is maintain a clear distinction between uses and intensity in rural and urban areas, basically avoid sprawl. And then the next slide is to say, to maintain a distinction and avoid sprawl, locate commercial and dense residential development within urban growth boundary areas. That's a simplification of several policy statements that you have in your packet. Next slide, please. So why? Why avoid sprawl? One, we've heard over the years that the city of Aspen, Snowmass Village, and Basalt would like to maintain a rural entrance to their towns, the green space, the agricultural lands, because those are the entrances, and no one really wants to see wall-to-wall development between the towns. And then a second reason to avoid sprawl, really importantly, is to be fiscally responsible, to limit the inefficient expansion of infrastructure and services outside of developed areas. I think that one speaks for itself. So again, just to go back to this, to another great graphic, same graphic, but a different perspective. Again, avoiding sprawl, do we want to draw that City of Aspen urban growth boundary further down the valley to intercept with town of Snowmass Village and beyond? So let's move on. So there is historic support for maintaining rural character. The caucus master plans, the Pitkin County Comprehensive Master Plan, all have a common theme, basically sustain rural character and support urban growth boundaries. And that has been consistent over the years, over updates to those plans. Patty just quoted some specifics from the Brush Creek Master Plan, one of which is to develop affordable housing within the urban growth boundary area and to preclude commercial uses that would change the rural residential character of the area. So this has been consistent. Next slide. Two other documents that support rural character. One is the 1999 Brush Creek Metro District Intergovernmental Agreement with Pitkin County. That agreement is still in effect and will be, I believe, to 2014. And that agreement specifically does not support annexation of properties located outside of the City of Aspen's annexation plan boundary. And the City of Aspen in 2019 updated their Aspen annexation plan. And in that plan, they identified the urban growth boundary purpose, specifically saying that the urban growth boundary identifies the land surrounding Aspen as either appropriate for urban development within the UGB or inappropriate for urban development outside of the UGB. And this is as recent as 2019. It's been consistent for a long time. The next slide shows the urban growth boundary area map that is within the annexation plan. The red line identifies Aspen's urban growth boundary, which you've already seen on several other maps, but that just lays it out clearly. So, so basically, to bring it back to where we started, we're just looking for direction from you. We're trying to set the stage for future land use requests that will be coming forward, we're assuming, and also just to help inform the public outreach effort that's about to begin about where the board, if the board continues to want to maintain the current policy of locating urban level commercial and residential development in intensity within the urban growth boundaries as a preferred location. We don't really expect to get an answer from you today, but we did want to get the question out there so that everybody is thinking about it. And to the extent that you are able to give us some feedback today, that would be great. If you would like, we will schedule some future work sessions to go into more specifics to try to help inform your decision about where to go on this topic. And before I take questions, well, why don't I take questions, and then I'll just wrap up with a slide giving some specifics about the public outreach, the first public outreach meeting that's going to start on Thursday, and then where the general public and the board can find information about how to participate in those meetings and where to find a lot of great resource information. But first, are there any other questions relating to the presentation or the direction we're requesting from you today?
I don't have a question. I have some comments, but if Patty has a question, she can go ahead of me, and I'll make a comment.
Yeah, mine, thank you, George. Mine, can I add my comment to my question, George?
Go for it.
My question is, it's my understanding that many years ago, the Board of County Commissioners had a policy decision about affordable housing must be located within the urban growth boundary. I think that was just a policy decision of the board. That may be something this board wants to reconsider, since we've realized that it's very difficult to build housing, let alone try and build it all within the urban growth boundary.
And sorry, I had a frog in my throat. Patty, you are correct. It wasn't a formal policy or resolution. It was direction to staff in seeking development or purchase opportunities for affordable housing.
And my comment is, I think as we're seeing, I'm not going to name any projects in specific, that some of the concentration of urban type development within the urban growth boundary is going to have great impacts on our traffic flow issues, our ability to provide essential services, et cetera, within the urban growth boundary. And so there's that, and what Ellen said, the financial responsibility and fiduciary responsibilities we have. So I think that needs to be brought into consideration when we say we want to locate urban type growth within the urban growth boundary. We also need to be cognizant that some of those projects will have increased financial impacts because of the concentrated density in areas that are appropriately served by transportation or highway infrastructure, et cetera. So I think that just needs to be part of the conversation. Where is it appropriate, and what issues might we be facing within the urban growth boundary with urban type development?
So
I'm going to give it to George.
Thank you. I can answer your question, Ellen, pretty just definitively. I think it's critical that we maintain our guiding principle, that is maintaining the rural character of unincorporated Pickens County. And what we're seeing is as Aspen has expanded out beyond their city limits, which includes Cozy Point, and Basalt is really going kind of crazy, even though they profess no growth. We have a collection, and I would not call it a string of pearls by any means, but we have this collection of commercial activity starting from the intercept lot, if you include Canyon, where you really don't have the ability to have any sort of growth, whether it be commercial or residential. And so I think given that our valley makes planning in some ways very, very easy if you're looking at TODs, because you just have 82. You've got a narrow valley, you've got a river, you've got canyons, and there's really limited opportunities to actually develop. And so if you start to encroach on some of these other areas or expand, then in fact you have sprawl. You have what you see in Willits. And the town of Basalt, I think, and you can correct me, Alan, years ago they recognized a 3-mile reach that went from the just outside the actual town of Basalt, going out down to Willits now. And they decided that 3-mile reach should be a buffer to really emphasize that you are still in a rural area, even though they have urbanization on both sides of that. So I think that's really critical to remember. We have really limited land, and it's very easy to continue to place in additional activities, and before you know it, it's going to look like Eagle County.
Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I appreciate what George said. I think the questions I had for Ellen would be, what are the exceptions through locations and extent? Who can do what and outside of the urban growth boundary already, and what do we see happening with locations and extent being employed? The other question I had was, is there a provision for some sort of temporary use? We've talked about temporary farm stands at the intercept lot, or maybe in other locations where they're only going to be temporary. Maybe they're on wheels, but they're not going to be there forever, and there's no intention to develop. Does this plan allow that sort of flexibility, or, you know? So those are the two questions: location, extent, exceptions that exist already, and something like a temporary, something on wheels, for instance. Can you share that with us?
Well, again, Cindy might want to jump in, but there may be some leeway. Suzanne Wolf is better versed on this topic than I am at this point, but the zoning may allow for some temporary uses. For example, at the Brush Creek Intercept lot, and so temporary commercial uses may be something that could be considered in specific locations. The location and extent question, well, yeah, when we're dealing with special districts and agencies that we have limited authority over, that may certainly may play a role in how much we can affect land use. But I think those properties actually along the Highway 82 corridor, with the exception of the Airport Business Center and the Brush Creek Intercept lot, are somewhat limited. So yes, yes, the location and extent consideration is important and has some impact on how much we can influence. We can come back to you with some specifics about where that influence will be most prevalent. But that's really all I have to offer at this point, unless Cindy has more to add.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah, I think I would like to add just a little bit that our world has changed in location and extent, and I think it's a great idea perhaps to look at ownership maps and bring those back to the board and show where the board may want to try to work with some of these special districts and look at that influence. I think, again, master plans are a way of working the most, I don't know, effectively or closely with our adjacent jurisdictions and understanding our philosophies and how we'd like to see those work together. So I think that's something that we can also strive to look at more, you know, amongst planning staffs and elected officials to understand and be concrete on those policies and issues. The one thing I did want to just come back to is the policy that we have today. There are policies in the land use code that do talk about the development of affordable housing, and that is in the land use code as a policy that talks about having, dense development within the urban growth boundaries, and that we should, look at preservation of existing stock in the community, and that is one of those exceptions, and why, in fact, the Board of County Commissioners throughout time has preserved many of those affordable opportunities throughout the valley. So that is one of those exceptions that you asked about.
Okay, Kelly?
Thanks. Can I just, John Peacock, you seemed like you wanted to jump in, so
Yeah,
can I
Kelly,
go to you
yeah,
first?
please do. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood kind of the locations and extent process, but we can come back to that.
Okay. So there's a couple of things that it would help me to understand, I guess, when you guys bring this back, and so I'll delineate those, and then I'll give a little bit of comment. I guess I'm curious, I'd like to understand more about Snowmass's area of influence and what that actually means in terms of land uses, because that's quite a large area, and so I just have a question about that. I have a question about Aspen, sort of how they regard their opportunities for infill, because you provided that in our packet as being kind of, I think, part of where does development get centered. And then the Holland Hills, the 3 Mile Reach area that George had referred to, is that under consideration of annexation by BOCC as far as you know? And related to that, I hope our municipal partners are participating in the outreach process, because I do think that they play an important piece in helping us achieve our goals, and that we do have, I think, shared principles, but it would, I think their participation is crucial. So I hope that there is some folks who are signed up there. And then as far as comments, I'll say when Zach pulled up the map of all the bus stops, my first reaction was, oh God, no, we can't have development at all of these bus stops. That would just be a chain of development, right? There wouldn't be any nodes or pearls. It would just link one to the other. Having said that, though, I guess, I think that transit-oriented development could offer some opportunities for us to meet some of our objectives with regards to density and access to transportation. What I'm concerned about is, is continuing to maintain a pacing of development. So, increasing density in one place causes me to ask, well, where do we give up density then somewhere else? So, that we don't have I guess, net gain. And I think that these are really important questions that I would like the outreach committee to also vet and weigh in on, to determine, is TOD, does some of those good qualities make it worthwhile, or do they violate, our commitment to rural character along the 82 corridor to such an extent that they aren't viable?
Okay. John, why don't you jump in and tell about the locations and extent process? To enlighten.
Yeah, and sorry, I feel like I'm interrupting a big policy question that Kelly just put out there. But
and I am putting it out there. I think it's not answerable today.
Okay. And just to be clear, locations and extent came out of a court decision that determined one local government could not keep another local government from completing its function, which could include facilities and that sort of thing. And so the locations and extent process provides really an expedited review process for public entities. So in this case, when the municipality applies in the county, the planning, our P&Z gets to review that. They review any application for compliance with any applicable master plans. And then they can vote to approve or deny based on consistency with the master plans and or recommend conditions. The agency or the local government who is making that application then can overturn any denial or conditions with a 2/3 vote of their board. And so it is really designed for the county to have or municipality, any jurisdiction with land use authority does have limited formal authority. Now there's also the 1041s. Cindy, you could probably talk to those a little bit more, the areas of statewide interest, which are also not a basis for denial, but for mitigation. But Greg, when you're asking the question, I just wanted to be clear that that the locations and extent process is really designed for an expedited review process. In fact, the county has 30 days from the time there's a complete application to make a determination. Otherwise, an application is deemed approved. And I think, Cindy, if I remember correctly, municipalities have 60 days to make that same determination. So anyway, I just wanted to come back to that and make sure folks understood that process.
So I wanted to just piggyback off of one of Kelly's comments, and certainly for your group, Ellen and Cindy, because when we're talking about TODs, if we start thinking about outside the UGB, there's a couple of things. Well, regardless, if you just look at TODs just by itself, you're assuming that you have a public transit agency that's going to be able to meet that demand. And that's really not the case, per se. RAPTA has limited resources, just like any other quasi-government or governmental agency. And so just because someone wants to build a TOD along a transit route, it doesn't mean that RAPTA is going to be able to service them, at least to the level that one has grown to expect from such a quality organization. And the other thing is we also know that development never pays its way, right? It never pays its way, whether it's transit, schools, roads, bridges, health and human services. And so I think that's just important for your committee to understand as they start brainstorming ideas. Cindy, there's a reality, financial and other resources that may or may not be available.
Yeah, just quickly, if I could comment, Steve, for a sec. We are aware of the economy in terms of how it works for the community overall and those services that need to be provided. And we're trying to come up with better information and statistics to use in our outreach program to look at those issues. You know, what does sprawl really cost a community? And Zach's done a great job of looking through some of our records, and we have some folks that we're going to be talking with and hopefully bringing into the discussion throughout our 9-week process to help us look at that. Because, you know, ultimately, independent, we have, I think it's 120 special districts throughout the county, which is unbelievable for such a small community. And those decisions made by districts can really have an impact on the general fund and how you know, one supports, or the whole community supports those decisions from a land use perspective. So we're hoping to tie those together more. in the conversation.
So looking at the concept of, at least at the Brush Creek Park and Ride, of doing something, a temporary food thing on wheels, raises the bigger question of other things that might be considered transit oriented. For instance, a daycare center is one of the things in the packet. Whether that's transit oriented or not, I would tend to think it's not transit oriented, but it would be a convenience for people who are wanting to ride. Oh, for instance, maybe they want to drive their car to the Brush Creek Park and Ride and leave their kid at a daycare center there, and then be on the bus to go into town and get their cup of coffee, go into town. I think that's kind of stretching the definition of something that's transit oriented. It's really more of a community amenity that we want to take into consideration, but it doesn't have to be at a transit station to have that amenity. So my thought is something would have to be immediately connected to transit. And the case of providing some refreshments or coffee or a little bit of snacks for people who might be on the bus for a whole hour getting to their home, I think that's something that could be considered a amenity that's transit oriented. Irregardless of that question, though, I think anything, if we did make a change, I would make it essential that it just be a temporary thing on a trial basis for like a 1-year period or whatever, and then be reassessed after that time. I'm tending to think we could probably get by without having any sort of food service on the buses, because that's going to create a huge cleanup job for the RAPTA staff to clean up after the mess of the spilled coffee and all sorts of things. So those are just some other considerations to take into account when we're looking at this going forward. So any further board ideas right now? We're coming up to the end of our allotted time for this item. And I'm not seeing any hands going up. So Ellen and Cindy, do you have any last thoughts for us?
Cindy, if you have something you want to jump to, I was going to go right to this slide. Are you good? Okay. So I just wanted to make everybody who may be watching and the board aware of the information that we have on our Picken County Community Development webpage. The link is at the top right of the screen. And if you do go, you start at the county webpage, go to Planning and Zoning, Building, to that link, and then once you get to that link, as you can see, the Growth Management Public Outreach Information link is available. If you press on that link, it will take you to the page that identifies all of the meeting dates, the times of the meetings, which is going to be consistently from till noon on Thursdays for the next 9 weeks. And then you can see several tabs there that aren't highlighted, but those contain a lot of great resource information relating to growth management and zoning, and great background. And we'll continue to populate those tabs as need be and add any that seem necessary. So if anybody is interested, this is a resource page that's available, and you can see that both Zach Hendricks and I are also listed with links if anybody would like to contact us to get more information. We have about, I think, almost 100 people who have expressed an interest in this first meeting on Thursday. And so we hope to have a really good discussion with a diverse group of people in the community to get started. So just wanted to get that out in front. County commissioners, do you have any questions about these upcoming, well, you've given us some good direction for the upcoming meetings, but anything specific to this webpage or anything you'd like me to point out before we wrap?
Good, thank you, Ellen, and Suzanne, and Zach. Oh, and Cindy, not Suzanne, and Zach.
Yeah, thank you all of you for your effort on this. It's another monumental effort that you are tackling here on this issue. And I don't see any other hands raising. I think we're all good at this point. So we look forward to the outcome of these public meetings.
Great. Thanks for the input, and we will come back to you in work sessions once we've gotten into the middle of these public outreach meetings to check in. And to the extent that you as individuals, not as a whole board, can participate in one or more of these meetings, feel free.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, moving on our agenda, and we have our weekly COVID-19 update by John Peacock.
Thanks, Steve. I'm just trying to... Sorry, I did not have my mic on. I'm just going to do a quick screen share here, I think. So just wanted to note for the board that obviously, as you've read in the paper and such, our data as we move farther away from our suppression strategies into how do we live with the SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 virus, where we have more activities, we are seeing our case counts go up. Pickens County is currently at 80 confirmed cases. In terms of testing, since we started the symptomatic testing at AVH in April, 50 of those 80 have come out of that testing program with 827 people tested. And this is as of 6 p.m. yesterday, so we'll be updating that data again. Overall, our testing percentage, and this is longitudinal over all of our tests, remains below 10%, but we have peaked up over that 5% overall. So that's a trend that we're going to hope to get down. But you can see in terms of our confirmed cases by onset date, when we were in our suppression strategy, we had almost no cases for quite a while there in May. And as we've been reopening and reintroducing activities as expected, our case counts are going up. Our other indicators in terms of the hospital data and capacity of the healthcare system continues to remain comfortable, but we're going to need to watch all of this. As the infection rates go up, that can be a leading indicator for the hospital and such. We're going to be continuing to track the data, but overall our indicators continue to be roughly where we expected, with some concerning trends in terms of the increases. So that's just a quick review of the data. Before I go away from this, I'm not sure I can answer a lot of questions about the data, but I'd be happy to try. Thank you. There's a Board of Health meeting that's going to be happening on Thursday. A lot of the agenda, oh, here, I'll stop sharing there. A lot of the agenda is going to be focused on the changing state public health orders and our ongoing strategy with our local public health orders and, you know, how we can and do want to follow our roadmap to reopening. There's two levels of that. The state recently made changes to the Safer at Home order that allows some additional activities that currently are not allowed under our existing public health order. For example, bars to open at 25%. We're still waiting. I do not believe the state guidelines for that are out yet. So there's going to be some conversations about those next steps with lodging, bars, some of those pieces that are either in our roadmap for reevaluating or are now allowed under the new Safer at Home order. There'll likely also be a conversation a little bit about the upcoming change to the Protect Our Neighbors phase of the state public health order, which is I think a pretty significant shift in strategy from the state in terms of the COVID response. It really takes all activities, and we're still waiting to see the final, but allows activities to resume roughly at about 50% for communities that qualify to go into the Protect Our Neighbors phase, with group sizes going up to 500 people. The state's currently at 10 under the Safer at Home state public health order. There is a step-in process that we're still waiting to get more information on from the state that allows group sizes to incrementally increase based on how communities are performing on certain metrics. So that can be infection rates per 100,000 in population, hospital bed utilization. We're still waiting to get the final metrics that the state is proposing, and they have a process set up actually with local public health agencies to discuss those. So the Board of Health meeting is going to spend some time really going through the next phases of reopening, the epi data, and getting some confirmation about how we want to pursue based on our roadmap to reopening.
Steve, could I? Hello, Steve?
Yep.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's part of the public health agenda too, just so the rest of the commissioners know. There's now we have an ability for commissioners or anybody who's Board of Health members to report back to the Board of Health things we're hearing in the community, and there's a ability just to click on, you can submit it electronically. I think that would be beneficial because I think all five of us maybe hear some of the same things and maybe hear very different things. So I think we need to provide that access to the rest of the Board of Commissioners to be able to submit the comments they're hearing around the community to the Board of Health. So I think that would be a great idea. And then, you want to tag on to that? No, and then the other thing, in pulling up the governor's information about the new Safer, the things that took effect on the 18th, I have a question for you. On the Safer at Home, it says partial reopening around 25 to 50% with capacity caps to give public health and healthcare systems ability to scare their testing, tasing, TASING, and treatment capabilities. What the heck is scare their testing and what is tasing? You think those are typos?
I think those are probably typos, yeah.
So the governor's order that was just sent out has typos in, just to question that.
And was that in the actual public health order, Patty, that you caught that?
It's in the information from Jared Polis's office.
Okay. Yeah, if you,
that Karen sent on to. It's in the, you can click on it under Protect Our Neighborhood Framework, the stuff that Karen sent us to click on.
okay. Well, I would truly be throwing stones in glass houses for criticizing.
Well, leave it to me to pick up the
typos right now.
typos. But this information is really, because it really gives you the breakdown of what actually became effective on June 18th per the governor's safer at home guidelines. So I think this one slide is really imperative to what the Board of Health is going to discuss on Thursday. Whether we scare it or tase it, I don't know.
I don't think tasing is a good word these days.
I
so.
know, I'm like, did they really scare and tase you?
I'll just ask my questions, and then if John, you can answer them, great, or if Patty and Greg, you need to carry them forward to Board of Health on Thursday, I would appreciate that. So I guess with regards to the stats, so I think are still under a variance which uses an 18 case metric that is connected to our variance. So I'd like to understand, is that one metric, a hammer, or are we looking at that in the context of the other metrics that you already talked about with regards to hospital capacity, number of hospital staff that is showing symptoms, et cetera? And then, part of that comes from, I think, just confusion about how closely we're aligned with these state orders at this point, since we've had a bit of a phased opening, and where we significantly continue to depart. Just in the most plain speak possible, it would be helpful for me. And then I had something, and then given the, given that we're seeing outbreaks among younger populations, I'd like to hear, I guess, from the medical team about testing for asymptomatic people, given that the young folks tend to be more asymptomatic, and if they're changing thoughts on that, on how we approach that or not. Those are my 3 questions right now.
So the 18 cases was a metric that was placed by the state when our variance was issued. And so I think we're continuing to look at that whole suite of data, particularly around the healthcare capacity and that sort of thing. As the state transitions to the Protect Our Neighbors phase, our variances will go away, basically, and the state will have a new variance process. And our understanding is that will happen by the 3rd, I believe, by July 3rd. And so we'd still need to have clarity with the state. We're not clear on where that metric came from, Kelly. So we're kind of tracking the data that we've developed in cooperation with our medical advisory team and such.
And they didn't really give an explanation. It applied to everybody who requested was granted a variance. And it wasn't a matter of, when they were tested, it was just kind of a number. And then they attached a percentage also to it of testing and people that tested positive. So that's why the Board of Health, and I think John's guidance said, let's look at the whole gamut and looking at, but the state trigger number is 18. At 18, they pull your variance. We cannot act on our variance at any number. We can just not act on it.
Yeah.
So, and I think in the changes that are coming forward with to Protect Your Neighbor, the next phase with the state and the variances, we can either ask to roll portions of our variance over, or they may have a whole new process to submit, and we may decide not to submit anything because we're already in alignment, we're already in a direction, we don't need it anymore. So that's a decision that'll be coming forward.
As far as how we align to the state order, I don't have the full detail off the top of my head, but there are some major areas where we are either more strict or a little bit less strict. And so we continue right now to be more strict, for example, around lodging, because we have a 50% capacity. That is one of the things that the Board of Health is going to be talking about on Thursday, because we had anticipated relooking at that for the 26th. And aligning more with the state public health order. So that'll be a conversation. With the new amendments, our public health order right now has not been amended to provide for bars to reopen. So we remain stricter there. Probably the biggest areas where our variance applies is in group size. The state remains at a maximum group size of 10. We have issued event guidelines, but we've kept it fairly narrow relative to some of our neighbors and such about how the group sizes and such are defined for 50. So we're a little bit less strict than the state there. Restaurants, the variance that we were granted just happened to align exactly with the state order, so we're in line on that. So those are some of the major areas of alignment or not. There's probably masks would be the other, where we do require masks, for example, to enter restaurants while you're going to your seat, whereas the state is a recommendation.
Mm-hmm. And I would just, if I could make one more final comment for my time, I just would note, like, this, we're in another transition of this epidemic, right? Where we're now starting to see re-emergence of cases. And so it's raising questions, I think, in the community about, what happens. And so I think it would really help if the Board of Health just presented like a clear framework of, whether it's, hey, we're gonna look at targeting specifically in areas where the emergence is happening, rather than broad-based community actions that affect everybody, to help if we need to, kind of tamp down again, because I think that is the big question out there. Are we gonna, if we step back, what does that mean? Is that isolated to individual experiences, or is that a broad community reaction that has to occur?
Can I request, since, by the way, Greg, I will not be attending the meeting on Thursday, maybe if you put that in writing, send it to Greg, because
Sure.
I think that's a really great question to ask the Board of Health.
And then on the testing, I'm going to forward an email to all of you that was developed with our public health staff and the medical advisory team at the hospital. It runs through, I think, a lot of your questions, Kelly, about testing and asymptomatic testing. And I apologize,
Well, I think you did
just don't
send
have
that.
it
No,
off the
and
top of my
I
head.
know.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if given the now seeing more asymptomatic populations with cases, if that has triggered a change.
There is a conversation about asymptomatic testing, but there still is a timeline from potential
Yeah.
exposure for it to be effective.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
We don't want to say, no kids, you're fine, and
Yeah. And then, go
Let
have
them
your
run
parties
rampant.
in the park.
Yeah.
because
Steve,
they
I just
will.
want to tag onto the testing really quick. Watching the news today, John, I'm going to give you a heads up because I know how much you love testing and how knowledgeable you are. The CDC is releasing a new test that you can test both for regular flu and for COVID.
Oh, good.
So we can separate out the symptomatic people who say, but I have symptoms, how can I be negative? It's because you're negative for COVID, but you're positive for the flu virus. So that may be something we want to look forward in the future when we get into flu season, so we can maybe be prepared for that.
Okay.
And you're the testing expert, as we know.
I'm not sure that would be the case. Couple other items I wanted to cover with you guys.
Wait, George has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, George.
I just want to go back to testing. I know, as you said, John, that you're going to be getting some information out to us. But if we look at this recent case with the 10 young people throughout in the Mid-Valley who one case came up, and I happened to sort of hear some information about that. And so it seems like there's still some confusion out in the public in terms of when I should be tested and what sort of testing should I get and what do those results mean. So if someone who's symptomatic and goes to their primary physician or go to Aspen Care, the hospital, if they don't have a primary physician, they would be getting a PCR test, I'm assuming. But then, with this case, with this young group, the other kids, what I understand is they just went and got the serological testing, just to test for antibodies, and a few of them came back negative, so they felt they were fine. And we know that there is a wide range in terms of accuracy of those tests, but there's this feeling out there that I can just go out and get tested, and even though it's at the moment of time, that I can rely on that testing and then go back into the general population and continue to do whatever activities I'm doing. And to Kelly's point, I've noticed it more and more that we're seeing young people. I see them out on the trails in groups, just extremely casual, paying no attention to social distancing, no awareness, and then you sort of follow the dots. So kids get sick, they transmit it to their parents, who hopefully were trying to get back to work. They may transmit it to some of our more vulnerable populations. So again, for me, the question, the confusion, I think, is surrounding testing. When should I get tested? Who should get tested? What does it really mean?
Yeah, so just real quick, every person in Pickens County, whether you're a resident or a visitor, is encouraged to get a PCR test if they have symptoms. That has to be done through a primary care physician. If you do not have a primary care physician, you can contact the AVH's primary care practice, and I do not have the number right in front of me right now. I'm sorry. I know I should have it memorized by now. But this information is available on our website, www.pickenscounty.com, under the COVID-19 information. So George, every person who has symptoms, and we do have rapid PCR tests now for symptomatic individuals, so those results get turned around in a matter of an hour or two, not days. As far as the asymptomatic goes, there are several reasons why some people may need a test when they don't have symptoms. The first is medical testing. So if you have somebody who's going to have a procedure and is going to be coming into the hospital, COVID tests are administered as part of a screening process. Kelly, I think to your question earlier, if a person is exposed, public health may test certain people that have been exposed to an infected person in order to determine if the virus is spread and to what extent. But there needs to be a certain period of time that's passed before those tests really become accurate. And it usually for the exposed person, you're looking for those who are in close contact within 2 days of the infected person showing symptoms, and that exposure is closer than 6 feet for 10 minutes or more. Typically, what we're understanding is that it takes 5 to 7 days for the virus to replicate enough in the body for asymptomatic testing to be accurate. So there's still that time component. And even with that, even when you're symptomatic and you have the PCR test, there is still a relatively high false negative rate with these tests. They're very specific to the COVID virus. But sometimes there are false negatives where an individual does have the virus but gets a negative test. And that's why adhering, whether you're symptomatic, asymptomatic, adhering to the 5 commitments of containment, the 6 feet of social distancing, the hygiene, the washing of hands, the wearing of masks, staying home if you have symptoms, and getting that PCR test. So I don't know if that was as short or as clear an explanation, but hopefully George and Kelly, I think both of you raised those questions that starts to answer them a little bit.
The other thing, John, I would like you to clarify is the new thing about the new thing. It's not so much, it's the social distancing, but it's that 65%, 44. You know, I think that's important for people to know what that means. And you did a great explanation the other day about what that means. It means cut down your social opportunities by at 65%. If we all just said, rather than go to the grocery store 3 times a week, let me see if I can consolidate to 2 or 1 visits.
Yeah.
If I go out to dinner 4 nights a week, maybe I do takeout 2 nights, and you know, so I think that cuts that. That's a different form of social distancing. It's cutting your social opportunities by a certain percentage to be protective of all the demographics of the public.
Yeah, it's all about cutting the likelihood of transmission by reducing the contacts.
I think that's a clarification
John,
people need.
John, just following up on that. So then we go into contact tracing. And so again, let's just use this most recent case with these kids down in Mid-Valley. So I don't know if they've been contacted yet or not, but let's say they have been contacted. What sort of information are they getting, and what sort of what do they have to be doing? I mean, can they just sort of do their normal routines unless they show symptoms within 5 to 7 days, or I'm sort of missing that link.
Yeah, so George, I think this is the answer to your question. So if a contact is identified to be at high risk of exposure or infection, so that's the close contact, so closer than 6 feet for 10 minutes or more with someone who's had a positive test, then those individuals are quarantined for 14 days. And then if they show symptoms, then they would go into testing, or as I just explained, there may be cases where asymptomatic testing is recommended, but it would still be probably 5 to 7 days from that potential exposure.
Yeah, well, thanks. And so again, it's I don't know if I'm assuming Eagle County, Garfield following the same protocols, but again, what I understand is some of these kids got tested for the serological testing. It showed negative. They are not being quarantined. They're just sort of going out and doing their normal social activities.
Yeah, the antibody test is typically used to show if you've been exposed to the virus, not if you have an active infection. And so typically, George, I would have to look into the use of the antibody test. I don't know enough details about the individual cases at this point, or what screening's been done. Certainly in Pickens County, we're using the PCR test as the test that would identify an active infection for those who are symptomatic. We are also, the hospital is also using a saliva test if we do asymptomatic testing, which also shows active infection.
Well, in the antibody test, the best way I think to look at it is it shows not if you have it, but if you've had it. So it's allowed, your body's had allowed the time to build up antibodies to the virus. Therefore, then that'll be in your system. We're not sure how long you'll be protected. Those are the unknowns.
Exactly.
But it doesn't necessarily show that you have it actively, that you're transmitting it. But so I would have to question that they use the antibody test. They may just have used a different form of the other testing, and the parents or whoever assumed it was the antibody, because maybe they drew blood and they thought that was the serum test. So I don't know, there's some confusion there, obviously, but that would be definitely something we should look into.
So antibodies, of course, are disease specific. We don't know yet what having antibodies confers to you in terms of immunity, resistance,
Length of time.
So we're still waiting for that research to emerge.
Yeah, and that would be, again, back to Kelly's earlier questions, that would be a good conversation for the Board of Health to discuss and get that information disseminated throughout the community as best as they can. And then it is a challenge, and it's more of a challenge as you reported, John, in the paper when you've got 3 different counties, and people are going back and forth within the counties, and everyone perhaps is using the same methodology, but different timelines and different resources available.
And I just, for the public, I think it's important along those lines to know that the epi teams, the epidemiological teams from all 3 counties have scheduled meetings twice a week and regularly communicate daily when we have cases that look like they may cross. We also have scheduled meetings with CDPHE's EPI team once a week, and obviously as much as necessary when we're trying to manage if there's an outbreak or what have you. So I think we are all still learning in this process as we deal with the contact tracing and the processes. Greg, I know you always ask about the technology, and the state still is working on it. So we still have a lot of infrastructure to build and process to learn on. And so they're not perfect yet, but the coordination is happening, and the information transfer is happening, and we are staying coordinated with our neighbors to that end. I actually had one more thing, but I see I'm out of time. I can push it to next week.
Sure.
Let's see, Greg has a question, and I have a question.
If I could, I think the conversation I'm hearing really we've heard it again and again. You know, there's a certain degree of amount of confusion. There's a lot of uncertainty around the testing. I get comments from people all the time saying, is there any place I can get information about the epidemic? I'm thinking, wow, you know, we've got this incredible website now for Pitkin County COVID-19 that has a lot of information on it, and people still don't know about it. And I realize this is going to be ongoing. The questions keep coming, George and Kelly. The same questions come back again and again, and the answers are never satisfying, as John points out. You know, this is still emerging. And I do know, as you said, the epidemiologists are working together. We've got coordination among the public health departments, believe it or not, despite the confusion statewide, I think. It underscores the need that I see for more communication to the public, whether it's more banners on above Main Street or the amber signs, telling people, what the rules are and how things have, there is a certain amount of uncertainty, and we're just going to have to live with that until certainty comes. One of the things that occurred to me that we might try to do is give people an understanding of what it means to quarantine and to be prepared for that. I've had friends who are active community members say, well, if I find out that I have it, I'm not going to tell anybody because I don't want to have to quarantine.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, we need to make it easier, more acceptable, and maybe sound like a less daunting thing for people to actually quarantine when the time comes. And once again, that comes back to community information. And I know the Board of Health would probably go along with that. Jeannie Siebold, who's on our Board of Health, just wrote a great op-ed, which hopefully will appear the next day or so, just reminding people. But once again, there are still people out there who don't know we have this Pitkin County website, and they don't know what's available. And it's so easy to jump in social media and complain about how nothing's available when there it is. So it's frustrating, and I get the sense of frustration from everyone. So all I can say is, John, you're doing a good job with it, and our health department is as well. And yep, there's always more to do. Sorry I took so long with that, but I just had to say it because I keep hearing it.
No, Greg, if I could respond real quick, Steve. So Greg, first, thank you. And I really want to underscore something you said, which is our case investigation and contact tracing is we're only going to be able to protect the community to the degree that the community is willing to participate with us. We understand the need for privacy. We respect privacy. And you know that we've really tried to respect that throughout the process as we've gone through contact tracing. And we really need people to be honest with us so that we can slow the spread of this virus and not get back into a situation where we have to go to more draconian public health orders, and we only do it together. So thank you for highlighting that.
So John, my question really has to do with kind of the same topic. There are reports from contact tracers in New York State that people are refusing to answer the questions or tell who they've been in contact with. Friends are trying to protect their friends so they don't lose their jobs. Mm-hmm. So there are probably a lot of people who should be contacted, maybe should be put into quarantine, maybe should be tested at some point, who are not because people aren't being honest on the contact tracing. Now, have we seen any of that in Pickens County to date, where people are reluctant or we know that they're not telling the truth?
Well, I think, unfortunately, kind of like the experience in New York, Steve, will probably only know that after the fact, you know, and so I think we, you know, just like Greg said, I fully suspect that there are people who are concerned, you know, about what does it mean for them or their friends or what have you, to be identified as a contact, and that's something that's going to have to be a public discussion. It's got to be a recognition that this is something that we owe to each other during a pandemic. This is just different, and we're really not trying to punish people. We're actually trying to, if we do this well as a community, our rate of infection will slow. We'll have fewer people that need to be put into quarantine, and we'll be able to reintroduce more activities. But it really requires it really requires people to be honest with us and to help us with these case investigations.
Can I just add, you know, our, maybe it would help to continue to clarify that the support systems that were in place during our suppression strategy continue to be in place throughout this next phase, you know, because, you know, we continue to have an economic assistance program for people who, if they're faced with quarantine or having to go to work, may not be thinking about that as an option to help support them, you know, during quarantine. So I guess I think we could do a better job on honing in on that point and, you know, reiterating that we continue to have support services for people in this next phase. Because I would hate for that to be, you know, that's a terrible situation for someone to have to be in. And, you know, that's a really difficult decision for them to make. And we want them to also be thinking about the community, which is hard to do when your individual situation is so pressing. So that would, I guess, just put out there as like a strategy for improving as we move forward.
Okay.
Yeah, so the other item, and I think we can talk about it next week, but we'll definitely need some direction, is the reopening of this building had come up at our last meeting. Staff has been meeting, all the department directors have met and developed a set of recommendations. I think the you know, just a couple of key ones, if I can put them out there and just get a head nod or such, is as early as next week to open the first floor of this building. So that would be the clerk and recorder's office and sheriff's department and Rich is on the phone here, so feel free to jump in. Rich, they would be open from 8:30 to 4:30. All the functions on the second and third floor, and this is kind of how we designed the building. So you had departments with less public contact would be accessible through an online appointment system to limit the number of people coming in. But we're seeing a lot of demand on the clerk and recorder's office and obviously access to the sheriff's department. We also would like to target mid-July, July 14th, to put a reservation process in place to reintroduce people back into this room, socially distanced, to participate in public hearings. And that would also be inviting the board. We'd continue to have an online option because that's appropriate. It's an online option both for the board members, but also for members of the public, because we're probably going to have vulnerable members of the community that could not participate otherwise. And in fact, we think that that's probably going to end up becoming a normal part of business going forward. We also are going to continue to honor the 50% target on this building. It helps with transportation. We think that while it presents some communication challenges and such from time to time, it's working well. It's protecting our organization, the community, and our ability to provide services. So there's a few more details in there, but I think the opening of the first floor, and Rich, we're targeting next week.
Actually, it would be July 6th.
Oh, I'm sorry, July 6th, that's right.
July, yes.
Should be after the election.
Yeah, so it'd be after the election, July 6th, and then looking at the following week to allow some limited public to access this.
So,
this room.
John, are we providing some safe screening for, let's say, for Elaine as a point of contact as people coming in, and even at the clerk and recorders? What sort of protective are we looking at for our staff?
Yeah, so that's part of what we've been doing, George, with the time. There's plexiglass screening up. There's right now we also have what do you call the nylon things you pull across to create a line? Stanchions.
Yeah.
We actually have quite a bit in place right now
I'll
for
take some pictures and send
social
them to
distancing. Yeah.
Yeah, George, you come
Rich, do you
visit
wanna-
the building for our next meeting
Yeah.
and see
Do you
it.
want to talk about some of the anticipating that we've made anticipating this?
Own cone screen for me to come into Aspen, period.
Yeah, George, like John has said, we put a number of items out. Facilities has been working really hard for the safety of our employees and the public. So we have put in place everything that we know that we can, at least right now, to protect our visiting public and also our employees.
Can we later, maybe either after our meeting tomorrow or open discussion, I've got some thoughts about our airport meeting and how we might want to think about, because we got to get that going to start planning those meetings, and I've got some ideas.
Future agenda.
Huh?
Future agenda.
Yeah, it's at some point. I think we need to talk about that seriously, get that going.
We could talk about that in our open discussion.
We're going
later
to talk
on,
about it
Patty,
at
if you want.
future agendas,
Shelley?
I think.
Yeah, I just would note that if you want our input, we don't have a meeting between now and July 6th, or, after tomorrow. So if we want to flag this for open discussion today or maybe tomorrow where we have a lighter agenda.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm sorry we ran out of time there. There are a lot of questions today and a little bit shorter update. Why don't I bring this back during open discussion, because I know you're missing a break and we have...
We have 2 minutes,
Abhishek
so we
coming
can
in.
take a break for 2 minutes.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is take a 5-minute break. So we'll start the next item a tiny bit late, but we do need to all stand up and use the restroom to get a drink.
Okay.
We will start at 2:49, 4 minutes late. So 5-minute break right now.
Okay, Amy, did you hear that? Go on. Your sleep mask. Okay, welcome back, everyone, to the Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, June 23rd. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our chair, Steve Child, who's at home, to lead us through the next item.
Hey, welcome everybody. Hi, Mike. Good to see your face. Haven't seen you in a while. The next up, we have a discussion and plan to ratify APSHA's adopted 5-year strategic plan. And so, Mike, take it away. I see Cindy's on here too.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's enjoying the beginning of summer, and good to be back with you again. Obviously, since we last spoke, the APSHA board has been very busy and productive in getting pushing forward a strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan that's been called out in the intergovernmental agreement, the updated one from 2019. And of course, from the 2019 or the 6th amended IGA, under operations, there's a requirement that a strategic plan and an annual work plan and budget be put forward. And so in the first year of the agreement, the IGA calls for the executive director, myself, working with the authority's board to create a strategic plan defining the overall mission, vision, values, and key objectives of the authority. And we're before you today because on June 3rd, the APSHA board, after a couple months of mostly virtual work, but working off of their efforts from the fall and previous meetings, came together with the help of a third-party facilitator and moderator. Some of you, if not all of you, I think, have worked with her to some degree. Her name is Stephanie Zaza, and Stephanie did a nice job of kind of bringing everybody together and working through some of the critical elements and achieving consensus and unanimity on not just the mission, but the vision, values, and the goals for the subsequent year and upcoming years. And so with that, that's a little bit of background. As far as, and I think we did provide you a copy of the proposed or the adopted strategic plan in your packets. And let's go through that now. And this is more probably for the sake of the public and those on the call that weren't part or privy to the board's work. But the 5-year strategic plan, the updated mission calls for supporting affordable work, states that APSHA supports affordable workforce housing for a sustainable community and a prosperous economy, focusing on both on community and economy. We hope to accomplish that mission through equitable policies, accountable management, and innovative development to meet the changing needs of APSHA residents in the community. We effectively communicate and partner with the community to accomplish this mission. And then the board settled on the vision of APSHA aspires to cultivate the country's most vibrant mountain community, diverse, connected, healthy, and thriving. I think it's a pretty strong vision, particularly in the times we face right now, the unusual times we face right now. And I won't read through all the specifics or the narrative of the values, but for the public's benefit, the values that the board focused on are public trust, quality service, transparency, accountability, efficiency and effectiveness, equity, and innovation. Then moving on from the mission, which obviously feeds the overall vision and values, the goals are meant to achieve APSHA's mission. and are going to be used to establish our priorities and our work plans for next year and beyond. And so the strategies that were identified and adopted by the board officially back on June 3rd in a regular meeting are to pursue organizational excellence, 2, to ensure financial and housing stock well-being within the current financial realities of the city and county, 3, to ensure the integrity of the social compact with the community and our residents, and 4, earn and maintain the public trust, and then 5th and finally, to apply housing expertise to help community. And obviously there are a variety of strategies that go into achieving each and every one of those goals. They're right in front of you, I believe. And of course, then there are tactics that we will expand upon as we put forward a work plan and a budget and present it to not just the APSHA board, but to the city and the county this fall. So without further, without any, I'll open it up. And before I do open it up to questions, and I'd like to give our 2 county commissioner board members and representatives, George and Kelly, the opportunity to speak about the proposed or the adopted strategic plan at this time. And just want to, again, thank them, and then also everybody on the board, the city council representatives and the community representatives. I think they really did a fine job working with Stephanie Zaza and staff to really bring this forward and do it pretty expeditiously, given the circumstances we found ourselves under in March. But basically, we're able to get this done in the month of April and May and do it virtually. So, and it was, as Stephanie Zaza had said, that was the first time in her career that in working through a strategic plan that she ever did one virtually. And I think that's probably a new for all of us. So accommodation, or much thanks to the board for really focusing in on this and actually getting it done and doing it in pretty record time. So with that, Kelly and George, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Well, thanks, Mike. I would just say that, at least for the public, that this is a new makeup of the board that was decided through an IGA with the city and the county last spring, John. Seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't really. Yeah. And with the reorganization of that board, the restructuring of that board, we came up with a different governance model, which included elected officials that hadn't been included for many, many years. And I think that has helped in terms of ensuring that the city and the county and APSHA, with the citizen board members, are all in alignment in terms of our vision and our goals going forward. And it provides certainly more accountability to the public, having elected officials on the board working with our citizens. So I think that, as you see, the product of that coalescence of citizens, elected officials has come up with a strong, a meaningful, and actionable strategy for APSHA to go forward. And of course, Mike and staff will be utilizing this plan as they prepare, as he said, preparing the 2021 budget and moving forward. So thank you.
And I'll just, tag on to what George said so eloquently, that, I think that what this encompasses is a lot that the community is familiar with regards to this program, and some things that we want to put more emphasis on, and then just some things that we want to do better, and to, put this out there as a shared understanding both among all the board members and among the various boards and with the public on what APSHA's activities and direction are, and hopefully I think just also a stronger relationship between the governing boards and the public and the beneficiaries of the APSHA program on what's happening and what the goals are moving forward. And I just want to also thank George. I think George is really good at strategic planning. He was a real asset for the BOCC on the board and helped, helped focus everybody at meaningful times and produce this, what I think is a great product.
Any questions?
Yeah, can I?
Patty.
Yeah, it was a really good read, and Kelly told me it would be, and it was. I like the way it was succinct. It was organized. I think it's actionable. I do have a question, and under earn and maintain the public trust, I'm glad to see that that's one of the priorities, the asterisk marker. But what do you mean by program participation? I'm not quite sure how to define that as part of public trust, as a strategy for public trust. I'm gonna look at George, Mike, unless you want to jump on it.
Let's see.
George, I'll defer to you, but I'm happy to.
Well, I'll give you my take. If I recall, we talked about actually several months ago about starting a public outreach to start to engage the public with some of our looking at the current rules and regulations and eligibility. And rather than just doing that as a board in-house, we want to bring that out to the public, have them participate in that process, provide feedback that will help the board and then make some policy decisions.
So you're tying it into the public outreach. That's a good clarification, because I was looking at program participation meant more people living in housing, but you're talking about the public participating more in the program itself, as far as the guidelines, etc.
Yeah, Mike may have a different take on that, but that's how I review it, or kept.
No, I don't think I have a different take, George. I think you're right on, and Patty, you're right. It's just making sure we're engaging at every point along the way during the policy process and the implementation process. I'll give you an example. We're obviously, you all know because you supported the Home Trek automation project of APSHA, and of course we're going through the throes of an implementation this year. And of course it's been in the newspaper, but it's not enough to expect that everybody or even most of the public is going to happen to have caught that article that particular day in the Aspen Times or Aspen Daily News. And even though it's been in the news fairly frequently, probably not enough to that it's on the minds of the public. And so we're working with the public relations firm on that project, Slate, to reach out to the public, do more informational pieces. We'll be sending out a postcard just to build awareness of Home Trek and what it means, and just in a very soundbite way, just to say, hey, we're introducing this. This is what it's about. This is what it means, and how it's going to change, the way we do business. And just doing little things like that aren't too expensive by any means, but are proactive and are engaging the community and making them aware of what's going on, so they're not caught by surprise when things are either implemented from an operational standpoint or a policy standpoint.
That's a really good idea. So you're talking more about public participation in the program being not so much living in the housing, but being part of the program itself. And that clarification is perfect. Thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
So I'll stay in here now, Mike. This is really an amazingly well-written document, I think. And I really commend the APSHA board and staff for coming up with this. You commented about being amazed to do this all virtually, but that's really been where we've been coming from ever since the beginning of March, to try to continue doing business as usual as much as possible, given the circumstances and the human resources necessary to accomplish things. But I think everybody has adapted pretty well to doing virtual online meetings and trying to keep the county staff working from home almost entirely. And we've been able to really keep visiting, keep the county open and keep accomplishing things. Maybe not at the same level because there's so many other demands we have right now. But congratulations on getting this out. I think it's in no small part probably due to having Stephanie there as helping coordinate the thing, because she's a pretty amazing organizer. We've had the opportunity of working with her a couple of times now.
Thank you for that, Steve. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Greg.
Oh, hold on. Hi. I had to. My daughter's playing the piano in the background. Sorry, I had to shush her. Otherwise, you could be serenaded as well. Thank you. Yes, I agree. It's great to see it clarified and as simple as this. It's a complicated thing. And I just wanted to point out a couple things I wanted to ask about. One is just on the goals, the headlines for the goals. Item 3 on my thing says, assure the integrity of the social compact with the community and our resident, singular resident. So I don't know if there's an S supposed to be on that, or I'm sure that'll change. Just wanted to point that one out. Then the other one is, this is the one that always kind of is an eyebrow raiser. Apply housing expertise to help build community. I could see a big developer in Denver, using that as their slogan. And I'm just going to be the devil's advocate here and say, is this what we're trying to do? Are we trying to build community? Are we building it better? Are we building it bigger? Are we trying to enhance resilience in our community so that we can have a healthy workforce? Or are we just trying to grow it bigger? Do we want to build a big city here? Those questions come up, and I think they will. So I would just say, I would ask the board to take another look at the headlines on their goals and make sure that we're super clear about that, because I could read the worst case scenario into that very easily, which to me would be trying to grow the community bigger. That's not my goal. But I do believe in housing and workforce housing and equitable housing. So, just want to say, I'm not certain about that, so I'm open to explanations or contrary opinion.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. No, I think that's a good thing to hone in on, and I will say that one of the things I think that was repeatedly acknowledged in this process was that APSHA is not a developer of housing, per se, as its work. Like, they administrate the programs that the city and the county and third-party developers build, actually build in terms of mortars and nails and, floors and things like that. So when we were talking about building community, and perhaps, maybe we missed that one word of all the wordsmithing, but the building of community in terms of, the health of our community, the health of our economy, the connectedness of our community, just the strength, and I guess to support community rather than looking at the word build as putting, new floors and doors on the ground. So I hope that lens helps. And this really this goal gets to the acknowledgement that APSHA is an expert in the fields here statewide and nationally and in our region, and is frequently sought out to provide input and participate in regional conversations about the state of housing and things like that, and provide policy expertise in that realm. And so that is, I think, what that goal aims to acknowledge.
And Kelly, I want to acknowledge also that the text beneath that headline explains that very well, and I agree with all of that. But I do want to say, if we're going to take it literally, that's what it says. So I would just say maybe there's an opportunity to tweak a little wordsmithing there would make me feel better. Thank you.
The other way we looked at this, Greg, was we all had sort of a different way to approach the different goals. We came up with different verbiage. And what Stephanie was really great at doing was to look at the different words that were being thrown out on the table and try to find one common word that would try to encompass the different thoughts and ideas. So the build idea, as Kelly says, was not so much building sticks and mortar, although it could take that into account because, as we see, the city, in fact, is building sticks and mortar for more workforce housing, but also to include a lot of these other aspects of the community. And so not only with this particular goal, but as we work through all the other goals, we were really cognizant of the meaning of the words, and we didn't want to have duplication or lengthy sentences. So again, Stephanie was able to coalesce a lot of our thoughts into singular words and verbiages.
So going forward, Mike, I think at this point, I mean, the document is written, and so what you are looking for is just for the BOCC to ratify this document. Is that correct?
That is correct, Steve. Yeah, we're looking for the BOCC and then City Council to ratify this, and hopefully, without having to go back, hopefully back to the board and I understand that Greg, you might with some of the wordsmithing, but I'm wondering if at all possible, if we can, maybe make a note of that and maybe try to update the next go around and for the record. But our goal is to try to get this adopted sometime in July so that we can put forward a work plan and a budget in August as the IGA calls for.
Yeah, Mike, just since you had addressed it to me, I'm okay with that. I understand the time frame. I don't want it to go back into the machine to get chewed up again. You have to fix the typo at least, and
we can
I don't know. And regarding the build community, I think there are better ways of phrasing what you're trying to do there. But I'm not going to reopen that can of worms if that's what it is.
Yeah, fair enough. Just so you know, it was bantered about by the board. But that's where they settled on. And if it's not too egregious, we just ask that we can move forward with this existing document, of course, with the minor edit that you pointed out.
So thinking working on that one word, you could use the word create instead of build, and maybe you considered that, but part of what is happening is actually building bricks and mortar, and is part of what's being created there. So you maybe tried the word create and ended up on the word build, and I'm perfectly happy with leaving the wording as it is there. Patty, did you have your hand up?
No. I was just going to say John has a comment here about putting it on the schedule, our schedule to ratify.
Yeah, just a note for the board. Probably a miss on my part, since this is the first time that we've done this. We should have at least an informal resolution of the board ratifying the strategic plan. That's something that we could add at the beginning of tomorrow's agenda, and I can have a resolution prepared if the board is ready to give direction to ratify the plan.
So maybe we could do a thumbs up if everyone's accepts the wording and is ready to ratify it at this point. Just a straw poll to see.
I'm good
with
to go.
It. It's kind of a thing where we can all accept it. We maybe, if you gave it to each of us, we probably would change a word or two, but the document is, as it stands, is a wonderful document, and I think it really says what APSHA is all about. So, John, turn you loose on getting someone to write that.
It'll be
Rich
short
or
and sweet.
someone, I don't know.
And just a point of clarification, if I may. We were working with the city and the city council, so there's no rush to ratify, even if you can't do it by tomorrow, John, only because We just learned today we can get on the work session for City Council for July 7th. And I think the next regular board meeting is July 14th. So my expectation is, the soonest we can get this thing ratified entirely is July 14th.
Okay, we can put it on another future regular meeting too. I think it's the work plan associated with this that's going to be the next big step. So as long as you feel like you have enough direction, Mike, for you and your staff on that.
I do. Thank you.
George?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for us to ratify it. That would at least inform City Council where the BOCC is, and to help City Council move that forward as well. So I would like to have that, if the board is comfortable with it and staff is able to do it, is to ratify this sooner and send that over to City Council so they know that we've ratified it.
Well, we're gonna ratify it hopefully tomorrow.
That would be great.
It is not I do not see
George?
this as a complicated resolution.
Does it require public comment?
I think I was hearing something different from Mike, and so.
I'm not sure there was any.
I wasn't suggesting it. I just wanted to let you know that's the time frame. And certainly, I welcome the county's willingness to move this forward quickly. Thank you.
We always do it on emergency if we want to, and public comment.
I think you can do this.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
That's all. David, Mike, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're right, Kelly. We didn't need 45 minutes. You were right again.
Well, we can pick up our building discussion because we have Rich here.
We don't have Gary on.
Yeah. Hey, Steve. I'm wondering if we want to go back to the building discussion that we were going to do during open discussion. Rich is here for another item, so we could tag team that a little bit and just get some feedback from the board.
And Steve needs to know we flipped on next.
Yeah, let's do that.
Your mic, Rich.
Oh, actually, I apologize, Steve. We actually had a scheduling challenge, and so we have flipped Rich because Seth could be here now, I think, or available now. Right. And was not available at the time we originally had scheduled. So if you want to do the animal shelter discussion now, we could do that.
Seth on? Where is he?
Mm-hmm.
He is?
Yep. It's showing that he's there.
Well, that explains why Seth's been.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about that flip. Rich just reminded me.
Okay, well, let's change the plan then. Let's go to that item talking about the new lease agreement between the board and the city of Aspen and Seth and his operation at the animal shelter.
Bless you.
So, Rich, are you going to carry this one?
I certainly will. Thank you, Commissioner. Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager. I'm joined today with Seth, and also I believe Ron LeBlanc is also going to be showing up here. There he is. Good timing. And Ron is with the city of Aspen. But today this is a discussion on entering into a new lease agreement between the Board of Commissioners and the city of Aspen with Saxon Inc. For the operations of the Cheryl and Sam Wiley Animal Shelter. So the thought today is to go through some of those changes on the lease that's before you. I'll have Ron make a few comments, and then Seth is on to be able to answer any questions that you might have. So with that, this was a previous lease with the same provider, actually, that started back in 2005, in December 2005, and it was set up with a 5-year term with 2 additional 5-year extensions, and so those have ran out. So we're here asking the board consideration to enter into a new agreement. And this contract will follow that same term. So it's going to be another 5-year contract with 2 additional 5-year extensions. So a little background, just so you know, and I've told John Peacock that in my years of my experience out there, there's very few animal shelters that you don't subsidize. So this is a rarity, and I think that's a real credit to Seth and all he has done for the community and the community's involvement, certainly in the animal shelter. But Seth has operated this shelter for the past 28 years, 14 years at the current facility. And then he also led those efforts 21 years ago in 1999 that helped the construction of that facility. So he's been involved in a long time. So this effort was a collaborative effort. Ron took the lead from the city's perspective and brought us together on a number of meetings. He rewrote, went through and struck through. We did a red line, and really our goal was to improve the clarity, certainly hold accountable Seth's operations there, and simplify the terms of the agreement. And we started back in January this year of having those meetings. So this is linked to our strategic plan. As the commissioners know, that's how we look at all of our projects, livable and supportive communities. So this is a 20-page document that has 2 exhibits in it. Exhibit A is premise description. Exhibit B is the operational protocol. So under the key discussion items, probably the biggest change to this was the term, the term stayed the same. Again, it'll start July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2025, again with the 2 additional successive terms, 5 years, and those come to the board each 5 years for your ratification to move it forward. The biggest change is in Article 2 is under the rent, and before it was set up on a kind of a profit sharing arrangement that was cumbersome, expensive to do from Seth's perspective. He had to have his accountant get in, do all the accounting, and then bring it to us, and then there was a formula on the profit share portion of it. So we just have simply turned this into starting out at a $20,000 a year payment. And really what we did is we went back through all the years of the money that came back to us and picked the highest year as a starting point. So we put a little pressure on Seth that's going to be the starting point. He was good with that. And then each year it'll be adjusted by the Denver Boulder Consumer Price Index. And that's typical for local governments to utilize that as an inflator. Under Article 3, the possession and use, that generally remain the same. The Exhibit B is different, and it's a Colorado Department of Agriculture document that is really the regulatory agency for animal shelters. And Seth had suggested that we utilize this, made more sense from a standpoint in their operations. And Ron and I agree that it for being able to turn to a document that talks about compliance, we felt that was a good way to go. Article 4, one of the things that we put in, and it's both a city and county directive, is our climate action goals. And so within this, our goals set up that will allow us to work together to partner on potential improvements that deal with our climate action plans. Article 4, there were really no changes. Article 5, the trade fixtures, no changes there. Article 6 was the insurance, and since this time, the governmental agency Insurance Immunity Act had changed quite a bit, so we went ahead and revised those and brought those up to speed. And then there was the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 articles. There was no substantial changes to those. And then the last one was just on the operating protocols, and I had mentioned that those have changed and are part of the exhibits that are here. But just to highlight those, from an operational standpoint, the fees are not changing in this to the community. The hours of operation are going to remain the same, and that's no less than 7 hours per day, Monday through Friday, and not less than 2 hours per day on weekends. And the animal shelter will remain a no-kill facility. And this has been reviewed back and forth by the city attorney and then also John Ely on our behalf. Had looked it over, so that's just generally where it's at, but I'd like to turn it over to Ron so he can make a couple of comments and then open it up to the board for any questions you may have.
Good afternoon, members of the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this. I know you have a busy agenda, judging from the past 2 items you've discussed. My role, as Rich outlined, was to facilitate the negotiations, and I can tell you it was a pleasure to work with Rich and also a pleasure to work with Seth. I'm relatively new to the organization, and this is the only animal shelter agreement in my 40-year career that I've ever seen that does not require a subsidy. It's also an example of a long list of cooperative ventures where the city and the county are partners to do the work for the public, and I think you should be complimented in keeping on that tradition, and I will shut up at the moment, knowing you have more items on your agenda.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you. I just have some real basic questions. Do we have a legal obligation to provide animal sheltering facilities? I guess I just don't know why this comes before us. And then what is the county and then the city's interest in this property?
Well, and I might turn to John on the interest part of it. As far as the legal authority or requirement, I don't know that there is.
Kelly, I don't believe it's a mandate, but I think it's allowed. And a number of counties, either there are actually few counties that provide that service directly. It's often handled through nonprofits or
contracted out like snow.
But we would probably, we would need to probably look up.
It's okay.
That.
I just wasn't sure if this
mandate.
is one of the, sometimes I'm surprised. It's like, oh, counties are supposed to do that.
There's a lot of
falls
those.
Under that. So thanks for that. And then just the other question.
Oh, the history and the relationship.
And just why are we in this together? And, do we own the land and they own the building? And,
Well, Seth and I go way back on that one. But he's probably the best person to maybe answer both of those questions.
Yeah, Seth, if you want to take a stab at it, I think that John and I can help on kind of that relationship side of it with the city. But go ahead, Seth.
Great. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you can.
Can you hear me? Okay. So basically, I'll give you in a nutshell my entire life with the shelter that tells you the story. Moved out here in 1992 to be a dog sled musher at Krabunik, having graduated college at the University of Arizona. Parents told me to follow my dreams. I loaded my car with my dog and headed out here. And there was a deputy sheriff and his wife who had the contract at the time, and they hired me to run the existing shelter with their contract in 1992. That was bleeding money profusely when I came on, and they just couldn't maintain it and wanted to give it up. And I was a 22-year-old kid and just knew I loved the shelter and was actually approached by, via them, was approached by the city who had an IGA with the county at the time, and was asked if I would take over the contract. And I was delighted, and then took over the contract officially in 1994, and have had a contract with the city and then with the county through their IGA all the way until in 2006 we completed construction of the new facility that we're in, and beginning in February of 2006, the city and county jointly own this facility that we are housed in, and they still have an IGA together, but now they are both owners, and it's not a city-owned building with a contract with the county. Now it's city and county are equal, and I have been in a contract in this building since 2006, and now I'm hoping to continue that because it's my life, my everything. I love it, and that's that.
Thank you, Seth.
And it came about, Seth, because of joint ownership of the property, because the city and county both owned that section between the snow dump and Public Works. And so Seth approached me in 1999 with this idea, this dream of getting the two jurisdictions to work together to create this facility. And then Seth So I kind of worked on the government side. Seth worked it on the fundraising side. And it finally came to fruition, and it was one of the best ribbon cuttings, dogtail wagging events I think we've ever had in this community. Thanks to Seth.
Thank you so much.
And Kelly, to follow up, one of the next steps, based on this moving forward, if you approve it, then there is a resolution that we're going to be bringing forward that's between the city and the county on kind of the more details of the operation, the ownership side.
Got it.
So you'll see those. Mm-hmm.
So tomorrow's our first read on this lease, and then the next phase will follow. Okay.
I just had a question for Seth. You know, I've had a lot of dogs that have come through there and cats as well, and we've gotten them, and you've done just an amazing job there. And I was just thinking the only other animal facility that I've ever heard of that didn't require subsidy was in 101 Dalmatians. It was Cruella de Vil and, you know, doing nefarious things. And I see splashes and sparks coming from your building late at night. I'm just wondering, you know, how have you managed to do this without coming and asking for money from the county or any, you know, what are you doing over there, Seth?
That's a great question. Thank you. So I'll try to make it clear and concise. So it's all on the up and up and totally ethical and legal. And so what we've done is created a system in that we are a self-sustaining facility in which the animals with homes support the animals without homes. And it's been incredibly successful. So the animals with homes, the boarding animals, the pet shop animals, the grooming animals, all generate revenue to support the homeless animals that are living here. And then if we take it a step further, in an economics, you call it a virtuous circle, because then one of the homeless pets that was being supported by boarding, pet shop, and grooming, one of those guys gets adopted, and all of a sudden they are now on the opposite side, and they're pet shopping, boarding, and grooming, generating revenue to support the next homeless guy, and it just keeps on going and going. And so it's been successful, and I've consulted ranging from a shelter in Brooklyn to even Eagle County, because what we've created is, it's not unheard of because we do it, but it's not common. And I think it works for so many reasons. Our valley's love for animals, my passion, I believe, and my staff and the knowledge and everything just kind of over the last 28 years has come together and grown. And it's great. It works. It's cool. And a lot of places I've consulted with, it would never work in their communities, just because what we have here is special.
No.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate the understanding that, because it really is unique. What you've done there has been really amazing. And I'm reminded I should bring my dog in for a shampoo just to help support this.
Well, if it were not considered a bribe, I would tell you it's on the house, but you have to pay.
Well, I have one question for Seth, and then I'll be done. So, Seth, I'm still looking for that lab pit bull, so don't forget me.
All right, I'm on it tonight.
So I do have one question, but first of all, I want to tell a story and ask, have you ever had any dogs escape from your facility? When I was a kid, we had a dog, a beagle, that was captured by the dog catcher in Denver, taken to the Dumb Friends League, which was way on the far side of Denver from where we lived. About 2 days later, that dog showed up at our door because he had escaped from the Dumb Friends League facility and gone clear from Denver to come home.
You want to hear a corollary to that story that's crazy? We have had a dog that was a shelter dog here that we adopted out to a local family that lives at BOCC in Woody Creek. Their dog ran away from home, and we designed the place sort of like a zoo habitat, and the animals definitely cannot get out, and the fences are at an angle like this. But a dog conceivably could walk on top of the fence and drop in, and this dog ran down the Rio Grande Trail. It was spotted by someone later when we did our research. Ran down the Rio Grande Trail from BOCC, crossed the bridge, across the river, through the North 40, and jumped into doggy daycare. And it was crazy. It took us a few minutes to figure out So the doggy daycare monitor, one of the guys here, walkie-talkied up front and said, like, hey, you know, Daisy's family must be in the parking lot because Daisy just jumped into doggy daycare. So I went out in the parking lot. They weren't there. I called them. This was last year. They were at the Highlands closing party. They'd left their dog at home, and lo and behold, the dog left home and jumped into doggy daycare. True story. I can give you the names to verify. Paul Viola and Katie.
They all love you, Seth. That's why.
So my serious question now, you're required to abide by different state, local, and I don't know, different regulations for the Colorado Department of Agriculture. Now, I'm wondering, is that going to create any problems for you, or is the Colorado Department of Agriculture actually learning from you on how to run an animal shelter? Maybe is more what the real truth is. So about the regulations you have to abide by, is that going to be any problem for you?
No, because I've been licensed with the Colorado Department of Agriculture for 28 years. And what's neat is I feel like when you pay a licensing fee, you should get something back. And so back in '99, when we formed the nonprofit to build this facility, it was called the Aspen Picken Animal Shelter Capital Campaign. I spoke with the Department of Agriculture, and it turns out you actually get free consulting by paying your dues. Not only do they inspect you and license you, and you have to pass the test, but you get free consulting. So we actually used their help when we built this facility, believe it or not, and we look forward to their inspections every year. And so when Ron and Rich and I over the last like 3 or 4 months have been sitting down discussing this contract, we thought it was great since they're sort of the end-all be-all of following the law for animal care in Colorado, the Colorado Department of Agriculture. We decided that we should put into the contract that I will abide by their rules and I must, pass their inspections and all that sort of stuff. So I look at them as an ally, and I'm actually on the advisory board for Krabunik in Snowmass Village. And so I deal with the Colorado Department of Agriculture a lot with Krabunik as well, and I respect them, and I call them for advice constantly, and so sometimes I hope I'm not annoying them, but once again, I like to get my money's worth and ask them questions whenever I have questions. So.
Okay, thanks. Rich?
Yeah, Steve, just to, I do want to mention that, again, I mentioned earlier to Kelly that will be coming back with the resolution and how this is handled. You see that Riri is on as well. I invited her just to tune in. On the maintenance side of things, I want to make sure that we aren't misunderstanding that what Seth does is provides even the maintenance for the building and capital improvements. He participates with this, and we'll sit down and go through that, but the money that comes in is put into a sinking fund, and the city and the county will work together on any improvements that have to take place on the building. And that'll be better outlined in a resolution coming forward, but I just wanted to not walk away thinking that this amount covers everything. We do participate in capital improvements and some of the maintenance. So.
Because there's also affordable housing opportunities on the building.
Yes, absolutely.
Which are very critical, and people have to agree that they like dogs and cats.
Yes.
And they like Seth before they can move in.
That's right. Housing. They got to get past Seth first.
Or Seth likes them.
Or them, either way.
Bring up a question about the climate change goals. Seth, do you see any projects or any changes that you have in mind that would help the county and the city meet our climate change goals?
I actually do, and I've even submitted some stuff in our meetings with Ron and Rich and I when we've sat down. I actually have a whole packet, and I've even proposed placing solar panels on the roof here. And I've met with Mike Tierney at I believe it's Aspen Solar Systems and some other guys, and that's one project. And also when we designed this place with Dean Moffat of Sun Designs, used to be in Glenwood, back in '99 when we were designing it and then completed construction in 2006, we fell short on money of enabling us to put solar on top at the time, because we started out with grandiose dreams of being geothermal and solar and all that. we were unable to come to fruition at the time, but now I have brought up the idea of putting solar panels on, and when we designed the place, we did design it to be passive solar, so we actually don't need artificial light during the day, and we don't even use the cooling system that was put in, because due to, unfortunately, the soil was bad when we were building, and we had to go 3 feet deeper than in the drawings, which bothered me initially because we were sinking the building 3 feet below the parking lot, and it kind of threw off how we had drawn it and how I envisioned it. But it has actually paid off because in the summer, we're even cooler. So we're a level lower than the parking lot, and we still get the sunshine in here, and it creates a nice peaceful atmosphere. We don't need the artificial lights, but it keeps the place really, really cool all the time. People sometimes ask me why I'm wearing a down jacket at the desk in the middle of summer, but that's how cool it is. And I like to feel warm, so sometimes I have my jacket on in the summertime. Just a side note.
Okay, any further board questions or comments? So we will be looking at this tomorrow, resolution or an ordinance tomorrow.
Yes.
And all sounds good to me. I think it sounds like the three of you have done a good job putting this together.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Rich. Thanks, Ron, and thanks, Seth, for
Thanks, Ron.
joining
Thanks,
us.
Seth.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Rich, see you later.
Thanks,
Oh,
Rich.
Rich is going to stay though, right?
Thanks,
Bye.
Seth.
Oh, yeah, Rich, you're staying here.
I'm staying, yep.
Yeah. So let's go back then to our discussion on opening the county building.
What happened with Gary Tenenbaum? Is he on or
Yeah,
coming? Or?
yeah, we flipped. He'll go after this, I think.
He was scheduled at 3:30.
Yeah, we flipped. Gary, I think, just came off. So just revisiting the discussion we started on reopening the building, I think where we were at is talking about opening the main floor of the building starting July 6th, 8:30 to 4:30, so that'd be access to the SO as well as the clerk's office. Second and third floors would be through appointment only to start the following week. And then we would be looking at a reservation system. So this would be a reservation system for the BOCC room because we have very limited space for those who may want to come. We would still be doing the Zoom meetings, the electronic meetings, and I'm just looking for the date here. We're looking at doing those obviously through the end of 2021.
Yeah, we did. And
Unless things change.
yeah,
Could be 22.
could be. Or it could be
Correct.
forever. Who knows? Our new motto of doing these. In talking with the staff, the pressures really are with the clerk's office and trying to get that public access. So as John had mentioned earlier, we had the luxury of really thinking about the construction of the building and the different levels of public access. So in this case, the sheriff's office and the city clerk or the county clerk's office are really those that really need that access. So they have been actually in there almost full staffed this whole time. They just haven't had the public coming in. We have gone in, facilities has gone in and completely revised a lot of the way that they do their work. They've got guards up, so we really feel that they've got the protections they need. And I think they're ready to be able to accept the public. And they are also trying to stay in. I was trying to see if Janice was in the building. I thought she might stop in. They're trying to also adhere with what's happening in the state as well. In fact, Kelly, you may be more familiar with that, yeah. And some of the pressures that they see about opening up, because you hear that quite often. So we felt that would be the best approach starting July 6th. The rest would just be kind of status quo right now. We don't have staff in here on a full-time basis. Periodically they'll be in. If somebody needs to meet, they can do it through appointments. Otherwise, we're going to hold tight on for a bit, at least another month or maybe another public health order to kind of see where things are at, because there isn't a rush to bring a bunch of people back in until we see what's happening in the community. But as far as your meetings go, the staff had thought a recommendation would be that let us look at Eagle's system. They've got a system for setting up reservations and see how well that's working. They have a bigger building than we have here, so we may have to use the overflow if we do get
I
a
was
big
just going to
crowd.
ask if we can just rotate people through.
After elections,
Yeah.
Not now.
But we would do it on a reservation system and start maybe mid-July with one of your work sessions, open it up that way and test it as we go. But with P&Z, Open Space and Trails, the Healthy Community Board, in August, we would look at then kind of rolling into that once we've had a chance to kind of test it and see how well that works. There is a strong desire, though, to keep it both ways because people have really liked the option of being able to just to call in and comment from their own home and the safety of their own home. So. But other than that, that's kind of the plan for this building, at least if you're okay with that. We have also talked about the library, and Kathy is working with the Public Health Department right now on how they're going to phase in kind of their opening. Again, taking the cautious approach, and then also seeing what's happening with the state with libraries, trying to kind of adhere to some of their opening as well. And then we met with Nan. The only other building that's really closed to the public right now is the Schultz building. And we met with Nan and her tenants and talked about their phased-in approach, and they're going to do the same thing. They want to be very cautious. We aren't going to open the doors fully up. They're handling a lot of stuff through appointments right now. Liz Starks has people accessing from the back, and it's by appointment. Everybody's doing the temperature checking, and so I think things are okay the way they are now, and so there's not a rush to open that building as well to just a full-on open public. So they would do it through appointments as well.
Steve, can I make a comment? Well, just for example, one thing my sister did with her business is very small, very tight constraints on space, rotated staff. So some people worked Monday, Wednesday, some people worked Tuesday, Thursday, just because a lot of the people wanted to come back to the office. They were able to work from home throughout this whole thing, but that has worked really well. And then she continues to do on Mondays meetings with everybody by Zoom, so everybody gets to have the conversation, but it's worked really well. But that was another suggestion, was to alternate days. I know people are getting very comfortable working from home, and I know that that's really a positive, I think, but at some point I think we need to we built this beautiful building, and I'd hate to see us not have staff back in the building on second and third floors at some point. So I think opening the first floor makes great sense, and we'll see how that works. And I think seeing what Eagle does for reservation system is perfect. And then once we're done with this, I do want to talk about some ideas for the airport meetings at some point.
Kelly?
Thanks. Janice said she's on her way. So
Okay.
We'll see. I also can help me understand a little bit more. What does the department size look like? Is everyone going to come back when they go to reservation, or are each department sort of handling who gets to work from home and who comes in? Is that?
Yeah, they are. Each of them, they said if we start needing to have some public face-to-face, that they're always going to have at least one person in the office. But I can tell you, Kelly, there is a desire to kind of take a look at, the future and what this holds, of not being all back in an office together, because it's some of what Patty's talking about is the tight, we did this concept, this open concept, not knowing this was on the horizon. So now we've got everybody kind of in cubicles, so it makes it a little more difficult in how we're going to handle it. But there is a desire to start seeing if we can continue to meet the public needs being remote and operating that way. So if anything, it'd be one person kind of at the front. We would stack people down here. They wouldn't go up and then wait in an office. We would try to cater them upstairs best we could by appointment. And so.
Yeah, I totally understand that, but there's also the flip side of that, and what it meant to have everybody in this building. And the personal relationships, the knowing the person you're talking to on the phone because you see them in the building. I think that creates a real consistency and continuity of the county as a whole. And I think not right away. I think in the future we need to aim to get back to that. Again, we built this beautiful building to accommodate and to welcome our employees in here. And I think at some point, not in the near future, but I think we need to let staff know that at some point down the road, when circumstances change, and we'll see what happens in the global perspective with this pandemic, where we need to go and what changes we might need to make to the facility itself to bring people back under the same roof.
I'm just going to disagree a little bit with Patty, because I do think that this offers an opportunity for just a new approach to work. And, you know, I think that it could be a real benefit to employees to, if they're able to be productive and to sort of gain hours back in their lives for folks who commute long distances or what, and have been able to really achieve success working from home. I don't want to exclude that from future consideration, but I think we have a long way to go.
Yeah,
before we're
and I
ready
think
to have
alternating work
those
dates, but then again, we spent
conversations.
millions of taxpayer dollars on a building to accommodate employees, so we need to be considering that, but.
During a different world.
Rotating days for people to work from home, but I think in talking to the staff that's in the building, they tell me all the time, because I come in here, how much they appreciate seeing a face and seeing somebody that they know is in the building and working alongside them. So longer discussion further down the road, but.
Yeah, and I'll just throw kind of the yes and kind of option out there too, because when we designed the building, and Patty, I think you're here through this, we did not build the full square footage, right? That was recommended. We shrunk it down, and with a couple of things in mind. One, that the office of the future is probably going to change, right? From bricks and mortar to more online, but that we still needed collaborative spaces, not just for our employees, but for our employees and the public. And when we designed this building, we made sure that the spaces were as flexible as possible. That's why we don't have a lot of permanent walls, and a lot of the walls that we do have are not load bearing, so that we would have maximum flexibility as the nature of work and collaboration and such changed. And the pandemic just may be hitting the accelerator on that a little bit, but we're going to learn a lot through this about online and what needs to happen in place. I know we had a conversation with our E-team about how much people miss seeing each other. And though that work is still happening effectively. So we're going to learn a lot, and I think we certainly didn't anticipate a pandemic, but we did anticipate that the workspace was going to change and the nature of work was going to change, and we designed the building with that kind of collaboration in mind. And it just happens to work out pretty well for a pandemic too. So,
good planning.
Yeah.
And we're also finding out that all the technology glitches, that we think everything's working fine, and Munis is down again, and Munis is up again, and Munis is down again. So there's sometimes we do need to have the physical person available and in a space. So I think that's a discussion, and rotating schedules and letting people be flexible in their personal lives is important. And for the people that have to be in the office, of fairness and equity of, I would like to work from home, my job doesn't allow me, and they get, that's got to all be part of the conversation.
Yeah, that happens now, I know for sure.
Yeah, but that'll be part of a longer conversation. Janice, we've already said you can open and you can do whatever you want over there.
Yeah, Steve, Janice has entered the room. I didn't know if the board had questions of Janice, because she is certainly in a different capacity than we are, because she's the one that's going to be.
Say something. Steve, are you okay? I think Janice would like to say a few words. Are you okay with her?
She's going to need a mic in a place, though, that's.
We're just going to have to move around to be socially distanced.
Yeah,
take this.
Thanks, Pat.
I shall back up.
Here, we're good.
Oh, man, watch Patty.
Thank you. So I understand I'd like to say something here.
I've got short arms. You got
can I review with you what we're thinking? The conversation that I understand is we're thinking about opening up on the 6th, in discussion with the managers and concerned with the volume of customers we serve, is to open our office for appointment only. So we've been working with Carrie Fleischman to set up an appointment system. It would be for all 3 of our departments. We will be done with the election. It would include motor vehicle especially because of the volumes they deal with. And it will help motor vehicle because we're experiencing repeat phone calls because people don't have the proper paperwork, or they don't understand, or they drop things off and it's incomplete. So we'll provide appointment only online to schedule that appointment for motor vehicle. Recording would include recording transactions, marriages, and right now we're conducting marriages. We're going outside to help
Saw
and
one the
conduct
other day.
marriages.
It was
So
very
we might as well
cool.
have them come in and assist them, as well as the research room, which is in need. And then by that time, we'll be through with the election, and we can schedule the election. Now, within the next 3 weeks, we'll reassess that as managers and see how the operations are flowing. I do want to share with you that in talking with the community, individuals, the reaction is, when we started thinking about it, well, we're thinking about going with appointment only, and the reaction was good. Then I know when I come there, I'll be waited on, I can get in and out.
Yeah.
So there's positive reaction, which is reinforcing what we're doing and what we're thinking about doing moving forward to accommodate the customer. Backing up, one thing in motor vehicle is a lot of the transactions you can do online, most of them, especially renewals, vehicle renewals. So we would ask the community to come in to do and conduct business for the more complicated transactions, chattels, new cars, new vehicles, mobile homes, things like that. But to continue to conduct business online as much as you can to help us eliminate the lines out the door and through the lobby. So I hope that helps answer questions as far as what we're envisioning. If anybody has any better ideas or can help us, we're open to that.
I think, could you just help describe some of the safety precautions, both for staff and for customers that are coming
Sure.
into the office?
Thanks for asking. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about elections, and then I'll talk about open our department. So right now we're conducting early voting, and that is off the lobby here. And thank you for allowing us to use this room Monday and Tuesday, because we have 2 voting booths right now available, and we'll have 4 voting booths in this room on Monday and Tuesday. But there may be lines, and we have, we're using, the markers on the floor for 6-foot distancing. We have
Twister, you're playing the game of
like
Twister.
Twister, yeah. And we're using stanchions to indicate where people should go. We have purchased plexiglass, so we have guards between staff and the customer. We are sanitizing after each customer, the counters, et cetera. Sanitizing pens, take the pen with you, et cetera. So we are implementing those precautions. So those apply not only for voting, but also within our department when people come in to conduct business.
Mm-hmm. And is everyone expected to wear a mask? Are staff wearing
That's one thing I
masks,
didn't
or-
mention. That's probably the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
And we'll have supplies available.
So masks for voting, masks for entering your office until further notice and change.
Exactly. And we would ask the community to work with us on that, and I would appreciate their help.
Thank you, Janice.
Okay,
Hang in
thank you.
there.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Janice. Okay, let's see, are we ready to move on to the Castle Creek Trail discussion now with Gary? I think we are.
Is he here? Oh, yeah.
And then we can go back to, I think we'll have some more open discussion later, but we'll take care of the Castle Creek Trail discussion now. So welcome, GR and Gary. I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thanks, Steve. I'm Gary Tenenbaum. I'm the Picken County Open Space and Trails Director. And with me is GR Fielding, who is the county engineer. I was trying to look where you are in this whole thing in my little Zoom world. So anyway, I wanted to give you guys an update because we are on the last week of construction. We are going to be done by the end of this week. So I was waiting to see what GR's reaction to that was, but we're there. We're getting to the final stage of this project. We're on schedule. We're still within budget. So I just wanted to take you on a quick tour, just to show you what I had, if you don't mind. Share that. let's see, you guys got that? Okay, so this is heading from the music school, and amazingly, I got up there when the traffic lights were being held on both sides, so there's some cars there, but this is heading down valley from the music school, and you kind of see the stripe. You're going to see where the striping is going to be based on the lines that you see. They're striping right now as we speak. But on this screen, you can see that the bike trail is going to be 6 feet. There's a bike lane next to it. I don't know if you can see my cursor on this. Oh, you can. Okay, so here's the pedestrian path. Here's the bike path. Here are the 2 travel lanes, and there's a 2 to 2.5, 3 foot shoulder on the side here, and so that should be striped by the end of tomorrow. And from there, let's just keep going. Here's the big wall. There's no big rock sticking out, hanging over. There's no big Jersey barrier anymore. And so, you know, with the cable netting underneath the wire netting, most of those rocks, if they start coming down, will end up in the shoulder and not on the road. So as we're heading towards the new Castle Creek affordable housing, keep going down valley. There's the retaining wall next to the affordable housing, and the sidewalk that's next to the affordable housing, the city will be maintaining this year-round for the residents there. So they did a full sidewalk on that. And then there's the connection to the Merle Trail. It's a much better turn into the Merle Trail now. It's not just a 90-degree. There's a lot more pavement and sight lines that you can see into the Merle Trail. And so I can leave these up, but so far the project looks good. We don't have many punch list items left to go. So we are planning on having the traffic control and everything gone, hopefully by Thursday. And then if we can't get it done by then, it'll be done on Friday. So as of this weekend, Castle Creek Road in this location will be fully open. So the next piece of the puzzle was, you know, usually we try to celebrate these things because this was a massive project for the county and city to undertake. However, in the land of COVID, how do you do a ribbon cutting, considering you have the Board of County Commissioners, we have an open space board both on the city and county side, and the city council? How do we do that and stay within the public health orders? So we have a public relations company that's been on board through this whole project. One of the ideas they threw out was, you know, we thought about doing potentially a virtual ribbon cutting, but one of the ideas they threw out was to just do a kind of a video, a short video, just thanking everybody in the community for their patience and their support through the project, and kind of just do a GoPro kind of video through it, just so everyone sees what's happening. We can show some before pictures and afters and kind of go that way. But that's one thing I just wanted to check in with you guys, because usually we just do a ribbon cutting, and we could have done one at the music school or something. But in the land of COVID and public health orders, I just don't know how we could do that safely and keep it under 50 people and you know, really be able to do that. But I wanted to check in with you guys to see if the video idea was a good one, or you guys thought about something else, or if you have any other questions on the project. And then if you, GR, if you want to weigh in on anything, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Gary. I think you covered just about everything. We've been really happy with how well everything has gone so far on this. So,
Steve, I have a question.
Go ahead, Patty.
In light of the email we got from Joe Wells about the Up Valley bike lane, and his concern that it was too narrow and that on the right-hand side of it, it was just a gravel, you know, where the rockfall containment mitigation comes down. Is that of concern? I mean, when in that picture, it looks really narrow. I just want to see what you guys think about it.
Well, thanks for the question, Patty. This picture that Gary has up probably is the best to see the striping. And a few of the challenges that we had through this section of roadway is how narrow the existing corridor was. And so if you look on this picture, you can see very obvious difference between what was the existing asphalt and what's the new asphalt. One of the things that we needed to do to be able to create separation from motor vehicles and pedestrians was to have a 4-foot minimum of separation. And so that's what Gary is showing right now. That is going to accommodate that down bike traffic.
Right.
And then to the right of that is going to be the pedestrian traffic. In order to accommodate that, everything had to squeeze a little bit to the left as far as the travel way. In general, you know, if you're still going to have a wider platform of pavement to operate your vehicle in, so you're going to have, you know, albeit small shoulder on the left of this picture. It's about 2 feet. And then you'll have your 2 10-foot lanes, and then you have this 4-foot buffer on the right that, you know, if that kind of perfect storm of 2 tandem axle dump trucks meeting coming down, there's plenty of room for them to, you know, not clip mirrors or anything like that. So I'm not too concerned because you still have more space for the vehicles to operate than you did before.
No, my concern is the up valley bike lane. That from that far stripe up against the retaining wall to the gravel shoulder. Is that a safe enough distance for, that's Joel's concern, is that narrow bike lane there?
Well, and so Patty, the reality of this is not a bike lane, this is a shoulder.
Okay.
And the reality is uphill bikers can be in the lane with everybody else. So they have an extra 2 feet here, and then the cars have an extra 4 feet before they get to the delineators for the pedestrian trails.
So you're saying there's wiggle room in there?
The reality is there's a lot of room because none of this is a barrier. There's no barrier between any of this. So between this and this is, you know, you got 4, you got 2 10s and a 2 to 3. So, you know, you got 6, you got 26 feet. The width of this originally is 22.
Right, I understand.
So this is just 22 feet. So the bikes on the downhill, and GR had a good, you know, if there's 2 big dump trucks and a biker coming up and coming down, we did the delineators spaced 50 feet apart so the downhill biker can get in here really easy. So the downhill biker can easily get into this 6-foot lane and, you know, basically the trucks and everything then have the 4 feet to get away. So overall, this is a much safer piece of the puzzle. And, you know, the reality is from the engineer's perspective, we needed to have this 4 feet of separation between the vehicles and this, or we would have had to put a barrier. And that would have been, you know, dangerous for the downhill biker. A curb for the downhill biker, if somebody hit that curb because a truck pushed you over, I mean, that biker would go down and that would be a disaster.
So Gary, again,
Gary,
again, the concern that I'm expressing is uphill bike traffic. I totally agree with you about more space and more flexibility and more room to maneuver, but the concern that we got from Joe was the uphill dab. And I, in hearing what you said, was now it gives people, it's not like they're confined to that lineage from the far left to the gravel. They have more flexibility. Bikers going uphill have more flexibility now, and there's more flexibility for other road traffic to maneuver around a single file biker.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was going for. And so this picture is a perfect description of that flexibility with the lineage that will be on the road. And that's what I wanted to see, and knowing that bikes, you know, have more maneuverability going uphill if they follow the rules of the road and ride in single file.
Right, and we meet the engineer standard of having 4 feet between the vehicles and pedestrians.
Right,
that's the reason why we put it on this side.
Yeah, I remember when we flipped it over, and the impacts to the neighbors and the trees and everything was much less by doing that 4 foot on the downhill side of the road. Got it. Perfect explanation, Gary. Thank you.
Steve, yeah. So we have to remember that, of course, this trail was really the goal was to ensure safe passage to and from for the music students, and the music students are only here for 7-8 weeks. But other than that, you know, those who ride bikes going up towards Ashcroft, it's going to be the same as before, but actually with a little more leeway. But we should have, Gary, we should always have on all of our roads, I think, share the road signages. Because frankly, as you move up Castle Creek, there are sections that become really narrow if you're a bicyclist and you've got cars going both ways. But that's just the nature of that road, and we just need to have signages share the road.
I was seeing if I had any of the signage in there. Because we created school zones and everything else in there, but I agree, George. So we could look at that and make sure that we got that.
We're actually auditing all of our bicycle road signs right now, as actually that's one of my meetings tomorrow, to go over a little report on that. So it is on my list.
Yeah, because one other challenge is going to be that as we see the influx of e-bikes with guests renting them who are not only that familiar with bicycling, but certainly not as responsible in terms of riding etiquette. And we see that more and more. In the three primary routes that we're seeing a lot of e-bike traffic is up the Maroon Road, Castle Creek, and the Rio Grande Trail. So that's an ongoing challenge. Because as Patty says, you know, good riders, when I ride, we always say car back and we get into single file. But the tourists who are renting e-bikes, they just think it's a bike trail all the way up and down. So signages will help, and education, continuing education, I know that we're doing with the bike shops as they're renting out e-bikes, would be helpful as well.
Can I jump into, what did we do about the speed limit for the school zone? Remember that was brought up? Did we ever look into that, posting that as a school zone?
Patty, the entire section has a lower speed limit now. We've added a number of different traffic calming devices, and now there is a better delineated school zone. So
Okay.
Yes, all of the above.
Thank you. Thanks, Jer.
Okay, Greg next, and then Kelly, do you want to comment?
Hey, thanks, Steve. I just wanted to ask about the nature of the stripes that'll be on the side. So that 2-foot median is not, people won't think of it as a bike path. What is that going to look like? Is it striped? Is it a spotted, dotted line? Wanted to know just the nature of the striping that's going in, and if we can make that clear enough that people really understand what it is and what it isn't. And then I love the idea of some signage on the road itself, summer season being the main time that we need that. So a painted direction on the road seems to get my attention better when I'm riding than a posted sign on the side. Just my 2 cents worth, but I'd love to know more. Just what are these stripes going to look like, and will they be obvious to people?
Yeah, Greg, the striping is going to be white line that will be delineated with bollards, another white line that will be like your edge line on any road, and then a double yellow line, and then another white. and then another white line, another edge line.
And also, there's going to be a bike path symbol in this between the delineators and this white line.
And what about the uphill lane for bikes who are confused? It sounds like there's some confusion already. Just want to make sure that people understand what to do when they're going uphill.
It's a shoulder, so it'll look like just any other striped shoulder.
Yeah, you don't want to put this is not legal. It's a 4 foot is a minimum for a bike lane, so we're not going to put that there. It's just going to be a shoulder. So the uphill lane is really going to be, 12 feet to 13 feet. And so right now, most uphill road bikers know that they, obviously can go anywhere in the lane they want.
Okay.
So
Can we,
on the way down,
I'm just wondering
they should be in here.
Is there a sign that we can put in for uphill traffic that alerts the cars as well as the bikers that this is a shared lane, just so the cars don't assume the bikers should be on the other side of the white line, and bikers don't assume that as well?
GR said he's going through that whole thing, and there's going to be a lot more share of the roads throughout the whole system.
My concern is with the school kids going to Country Day who are not road bikers. They're going to have bicycles out on the road. They're going to want to be over in that pedestrian place riding their bike up the far left side. Is that what they are supposed to do? The young kids going.
They're free to use that area.
Okay,
that's
what
the
they're
point
going
of
to
it.
want to do. That feels safer there, I think. And then there could be
they do it now.
If someone's going down at the same time, it could be a little bit of a traffic jam, but they'll probably mostly be going the same direction, going to school and then leaving in the afternoon.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why, Steve, this bike lane is really important because, people are coming down at a pretty high rate of speed, bikers, and they will stay in this lane. And so this is really for the slower bikers. Between the Aspens Country Day School and the music school, we have tons of photos, which we brought out originally that, that showed there was a legion of bikers that really weren't road bikers. And this path will be totally for them. Biking, hiking, walking uphill. We actually were amazed this spring and last fall how many people just walk up and down this that aren't going to the music school and they're going to, I guess, the music school just to see it. And we had to put no pedestrian signs during the work project because of how many people were actually walking up here.
Okay, any board questions? Project looks really nice. I really like the looks of the, the hillside, the retaining walls and all that. Turned out really nice looking.
We're happy, very happy with how all the retaining walls turned out. And if I may, Steve, just for 2 minutes, can I give you guys a quick update on the Castle Creek, the Upper Bridge project?
Absolutely. I saw the sneak preview that slipped on there earlier.
Gary, can you go ahead and, thanks. Right now we're about a month and a half in, and that was what was left of the old bridge as of Wednesday of last week. And Gary, on the next photo, can you pull that up? That is what is left of the bridge as of Friday. The old bridge is essentially out. There are some concrete abutments and wing walls to be taken out. The contractor elected and was able to stay within the limits of disturbance on the project, and instead of doing half at a time, brought in a temporary bridge that they already owned that does span Castle Creek. And so we're thinking that that's going to help expedite the project. They're already ahead of where we thought they would be at this point, but it's also construction up at 9,000 feet. So I'm going to bite my tongue after saying that we're ahead of schedule. And everything's tracking really well. We've been really happy up there, and I can't tell you how much traffic has increased in the last 2 weeks. And then as far as George's anecdote, the amount of e-bikes and more recreational cyclists that we see up there has surprised me. But everything's going really well up there.
Okay, looking forward to seeing that. If I ever get back to town again, which I haven't been up there in a long time, I should take a spin up that way and see it.
So the last thing I just had was, Steve, you guys okay with that? Just a little video, creating a little video as a thank you to the community and just putting it on social media and not trying to get a ribbon cutting?
Either that or 4 ribbons placed 6 feet apart for each of the chairs of the boards to cut, but I think the video will work.
Yeah, Greg?
Yeah, Gary, I think you could easily do a safe ribbon cutting with a few people, videotape it and put it out there. We celebrate it online. That'll be fine.
4 ribbons 6 feet apart, but he cuts a ribbon.
Or how about a bike?
I think
a
actually we
staged
can
bike
do both of those.
parade.
Virtual bike race.
A staged bike caravan.
Okay, well, we'll set it up. You know, we'll see which commissioner, which city council, and we'll see who can come and just do a quick one. We'll do a quick ribbon cutting and thank everybody, and then video it up and down, and then get it out on social media. So
Why don't you have somebody break the ribbon on a bicycle at a high rate of speed? That would be cool. Slow motion.
You want to do that?
I'll do it, but Steve could do it, or Kelly, or somebody.
I don't ride a bike, so you want to keep me away from it, so.
I could put you in my trailer, Patty.
Yeah, right in there.
Ride you up there.
I'll have the scissors. Oh, God, you'd have to go through the ribbon.
A guy with a tuba on a bicycle could break the ribbon.
All right, moving on, right? As George would say.
Yep. Thank you all.
Thanks,
you.
Gary.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Thanks, GR.
Thanks,
Good to see you.
GR.
So going back to open discussion items, John.
We have future
we have,
agendas.
Yeah, I don't have any further open discussion items, Steve.
Okay.
We have
Looking, trying to see how we're doing for time here. So let's go to future agendas.
Okay. So just a few items to update you on. We have been in touch with Kevin Werner from the Forest Service, waiting to hear back on a date for him to come in. The board had asked for update conversation. Right now we're holding time on the 7th and the 14th and waiting to see if either of those dates work for him. Similarly, you will see a hold on the 7th and the 14th for Board of Health interviews. Our applicant is unsure of work schedule at this time, so we'll be narrowing that down. We are going to have some certified annual financial report presentations scheduled late July and August for you, so you'll see those popping up. And then we have confirmed that a joint meeting with the City of Aspen on August 4th, I think all technology and social distancing allowing. That's all I've got.
George and then Kelly. You're muted, George.
All right. John, that meeting with City Council, the joint meeting August 4th, is that agenda a core presentation? Because I know City Council originally had requested that.
Yeah, so I haven't talked to Sarah about that, but we can put that on the list. And I suspect if council had requested that, that's definitely going to be on the city's list for conversation.
Okay, because I talked to Mona this morning, and she's going to try to get on our agenda the last Tuesday of July. Right now, we don't start till 1, so I told Mona it would be plenty of time to get on our agenda. So she'll make the presentation, and we'll have a discussion, which would be timely just prior to the joint meeting with City Council, because City Council's already had a tentative discussion regarding core and RIP.
Okay.
You can always do it at 11 if there's an ACRA meeting, unless we have exec session need.
I don't think it'll take more than
Yeah, I think like an hour would be plenty of time, Patty. We could start, 11 or something like that.
Kelly, you have to be more aggressive.
Okay, Kelly?
Too late in the day.
You need a
for that.
pencil. You need a pencil or a pen.
I just would like a tax revenue update.
Do we have tax revenue?
Talking to some counties yesterday, we heard from counties that did better in April than last year, better than May than last year, that they're on track for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Some having to do with tourism located close to Denver. They just saw some of that. Some of that having to do with the Wayfair decision and, better taxes where they would ordinarily drive out of county to buy something and ordered it online.
So we can do that. We're a couple of months in the rears. We wanted to see, because April and May are such small months for us. June is going to be the biggie. I can tell you we were down in April just over 6% in sales tax revenues, which is much better than we were projecting, but it's also one of our smallest months, so it doesn't necessarily move the needle. But we can certainly give you an update where we're at.
Thank you.
And some of the counties, Kelly, that I understand saw increases, some of them were corrections from past years. So, it is an interesting time.
Okay, I have one item. On July 14th, we were going to have a celebration of my daughter's wedding that weekend. I really can't be at the meeting on July 14th, and I know Patty is not attending that day also, the work session. So there'll be down to 3 commissioners on that day, July 14th. And that might sway trying to get Kevin Warner in on the 7th instead of the 14th. And also the Board of Health interview if possible. So we could all be there for both of those.
Okay, we'll make a note. We may have to move the Board of Health interview depending on the work schedule.
I may be able to zoom in that day from California.
Yeah, I just wondered whether we could just zoom in. I'm going to be out of state as well, but I'm assuming I can zoom in unless there's some technical difficulties. I'll be out of state.
I think on that day we will be on a river in Utah for a short river trip. So that's why I don't think I'll be within Zoom range. George?
And then, John, I know we talked about this last week. Did you get a definitive date for the EOTC meeting? Because I will be out on the 16th of July.
So will I.
I was planning to as well.
And that one I won't be able to zoom in.
Okay.
I won't be able to zoom in either. I'll be traveling.
Okay, I'll have to get back with you guys.
That would actually make my life easier too if we have moved the EOTC meeting to another week sometime. Okay, any other items? Patty?
Yes, I would like to know what this, I don't have any items on this agenda. I would like to know, I thought we were going to try and move forward with airport meetings. We need to get that going, guys. We have a change in this board in January, and I'm hoping that we can get through this before then.
Yeah,
I know we were gonna try and set something up maybe at the Door Hosier with reservation system for public, split it up into 2, maybe 3 meetings if need be, which I thought was a kind of a good idea, so we could, depending upon the number of public, because I'm sure we'll have more than a couple, maybe 100, 200, we don't know, people that in the public can want to be part of it. So my thought was the first meeting, we could videotape the presentation made for the public, that we could just replay the meetings 2 and 3, so we didn't have to start with scratch with staff, so that the next public that came to the meetings 2 or 3 had the opportunity to see the presentation, and then we could start with the public comment.
Yeah, so we're working on the logistics of that, and
That was
we're
my
talking about the same kind of concept of how do you break up the meetings. We'll still need to provide an electronic option also, because they're going, just like we talked about earlier, there will be folks who can't attend either way. So we are working on that. We're probably looking towards the end of July.
Okay, because I know it's going to be a long
heavy lift,
process.
yeah.
And I think, so as long as we're working in that direction, I know there's a lot going on, but this is critical that we get through this before January of 2021, whatever year it's going to be. So that was my only comment. Steve, thank you for coming back to me. But as far as future agendas, I tried to find something. I tried to add something, but I think I'm good. Wow. But I'm the only one now on here that says they're not going to be here on those dates, so you guys got to call in and let Charlotte know to put you on there for being out of town.
That's all I've got for you.
Are we done?
John, I have a question. No. Are you going to have the ESC meeting today afterwards with the Base Vision Committee? Was that going to be today?
The what?
Sorry, Steve, you broke up a little bit. I couldn't quite understand what you were asking.
Or were you going to have a meeting with the ACE Vision Committee today?
Not the whole vision committee. We met with the leadership to talk about the process of doing these types of meetings and where we stood, and generally that small group of leadership understood the changes that COVID had brought to the process.
Okay. So I think we've run out of things to talk about today. Is everybody good? Anything else?
Well, I think we're good. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will see you at noon tomorrow. Thank you, Grassroots.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Grassroots.
So I do have an appointment at 9:30, so I should be here on time.